participants, excellencies and delegates. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all in Paris. You have all found your way here. The building is phenomenal. It's a little bit difficult to find your way, but you will learn that very soon. So Paris is the home of the International Astronautical Federation's Secretariat, and it is also the birthplace of the Congress. And this is actually the 12th international meeting for ministers and members of parliaments. And it is one of the most important and also successful side events of the International Astronautical Congress, also happening one day before we are going in the opening ceremony. And we are gathering, here at this International Astronautical Congress since 1950, actually starting from 70 years ago. The IAC program has grown constantly, engaging more and more participants, and it is actually the first time that the International Astronautical Congress was held in Paris was in 1950. So in 2009, the IAF decided to further expand its main event by creating a platform for the national representatives who are invited to share their national experiences and to exchange on both sides their practices and their challenges. And I have to say, thanks to the incredible work of Dominique Tilmans, our IAF Vice President for Ministerial and Parliamentarian Relations, last year the meeting has evolved once more. So we realized that the interest in space by the members of parliaments was spreading also to the governments. And for this reason, starting also already at the International Astronautical Congress 2021 in Dubai, last year we decided to open the meetings to ministers and vice ministers. And we invited them to take the floor alongside their national representatives, giving a more complete picture of the benefits that space can bring to the national societies. So many of you are actually attending this meeting for the first time. And this continuous growth in participation is really important for us, and is a proof we need to know that offering a bridge between the representatives and the space sector is more important than ever. The space sector today is extremely dynamic, growing very fast, and is really a multi-stakeholder approach. And it is very, very important that governments, that the national interests are included, and that we are having international agreements on many things. So space can help to address many of the challenges we all have to face on Earth, from climate change to the management of natural disasters, a very important topic right now, and also from providing rural societies with the necessary means to be fully integrated within their countries, and up to new solutions that larger cities might require for their well-being of their inhabitants. So if it is sometimes quite difficult to justify the need to engage in space programs in front of national assemblies and also in public opinion. But space is really an ingredient, a very important part of our daily life. And many people are not aware of that. And for this reason, we have also decided to dedicate one session to this particular matter, because we really truly believe that by sharing your experience, you will have new tools to promote space within your nation. So I would like to conclude this speech by personally thanking each and every one of you. I would like to thank those who have accompanied us already for multiple editions of IAF conferences and of this event. And we count also on you to show the others, the newcomers, why it is so important to join us here at the International Astronautical Congress. And I also would like to thank those of you who decided to attend for the first time, and hoping that this will not be the only time, but that there will be many encounters thereafter. Of course, I would like to thank especially Madame Sophie Primas, President of the Economic Affairs Commission of the French Senate. She has been really supporting this meeting for over 2 years, and she's now hosting us in this beautiful city together with the French Space Agency. Finally, I would like to thank Dominique Tilmans for her really incredible impulse and activities. She has given the ministers and members of parliament meeting really, I would say, a new face. And I wish you all the most proficient event, most enriching experiment, good discussion, and thank you very much.
So, dear space enthusiasts and dear space friends, did you know that this meeting is the only meeting over the world across all continents where ministers and parliamentarians together exchange views on their space strategy and on relevant space solutions in their country. But this is not the only particularity of this meeting. Here, space is made for us. Space is not technique. Okay, this is really great, but what are the reasons of this meeting? 5 reasons. Because we are decision makers, and as decision makers, we cannot be absent from a so important economic sector that represents trillions of dollars in the world to advance science and technology, a sector that involves the defense and the security of our states. Because too many parliamentarians are not aware about the positive impacts of space on Earth. 3, because space is a sector that meets specific needs, specific national needs, and because it is omnipresent in our daily lives. It makes our lives easier and creates benefits for civil society. 4, more than ever, our world depends on space assets and space data in all domains. And because science, innovation, technological progress, as well as the search of our origins, the understanding of the universe, and ultimately, the benefits of space exploration for Earth are not the exclusive domain for engineers, for researchers, for professionals. It should also be the preserve for decision makers. Dear Excellencies and dear colleagues, I'm more than happy to welcome you all also to this 3rd MMoP meeting after Dubai and Quito. This being my last official speech as IAF Vice President, a Parliamentary, Ministerial Relation and Users Community. But it's life. It was a magnificent experience, and all good things have a hand. And I would like to sincerely thank those who helped move it forward, the MMoP meeting during my 3-year mandate. Of course, first of all, IAF, for having understood very early on the need to involve politicians in the Congress and to organize a meeting dedicated to them. For 12 years now, Christian Fentiger and his team have been organizing this meeting. And I would like to associate Jean-Yves Le Gall, Pascale Ehrenfreund, and the Bureau for giving me the opportunity to launch a new vision of the meeting through the eye of a parliamentarian. And this is very important to meet your expectations. Also, a sympathetic thank to my 2 co-chairs, Sophie Primas, President of the Economic Affairs Commission of the French Senate, and Soltan Mammadov, lead of Azerbaijan and lead for Azerbaijani Working Group, As you know, Azerbaijan will host the next IEC 2023 in the wonderful city of Baku. And I would like also to thank Lionel Suchet for his support, and congratulations to Philippe Baptiste for hosting this so important IEC 2022 in the marvelous city of Paris. So, and I don't forget, of course, all the experts who accompany each of our meetings, and this year we are glad to welcome Frédéric Nordlund, Head of European and External Relations Department, ESA, Sergio Sacoccia, President of the Italian Space Agency, and Philippe Baptiste, Président du Centre National d'Études Spatiales, CNES. And my last and least, but warmest thanks, go to all of you, ministers and parliamentarians, who want to make this meeting the place to be. Okay. Let's dive on our third meeting, and today we have five ministers, vice minister, parliamentarians who will take the floor. The minister, vice minister will explain their space strategy, and the parliamentarians the most relevant space solution in their country. What our goal? Briefly, we want to make space accessible. We offer you to share experiences, information, good practices, and initiate synergies between us. We offer you a unique opportunity to learn and inspire each other by making our meeting a unique source of ideas for operational space solution. Our motto must be, what is possible in your country may also be possible in mine too. But that's not all. The best is coming. We want to give you the opportunity to showcase your country, to showcase yourself in your parliament, in your commissions, to showcase yourself in your social media with the recording of the event and the photos you will receive at the end of the Congress. Dear colleagues, a long day is starting for us. I don't want to be longer, and I give the floor to Philippe Baptiste. D'abord Sophie. Okay, to Sophie. For me it was okay. Sophie.
Thank you. Dear Chairwoman, just a few words. Dear Pascale, dear Vice President, dear Dominique, dear members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, few words. I would like to thank you very much for your invitation, Pascale, the excellence of the organization, Dominique, of course, and you and your team, and your presence here today. I'm very pleased to attend to this event, and I'm truly honored to have been appointed Vice President for the second year in a row. Thank you very much, Dominique and Pascale. I'm very glad, and somewhere I'm very proud that this new edition will be inaugurated here today, tomorrow in Paris. This is indeed an important year for France and the whole space sector. During the French presidency of the Council of Europe, the European Union, and during his speech in Toulouse, our President Emmanuel Macron reminded us of what we have been defending for years at the Senate. Without control of space, there is no technological sovereignty, no economic and industrial sovereignty, no scientific progress, and no strategic or military sovereignty. Nevertheless, Russia's unacceptable invasion of Ukraine has revealed our European vulnerabilities, reminding us in a tragic way that we must, in France and in Europe, raise our ambition in space, move faster, and defend international space cooperation as we do today. We hope that the next Ministerial Conference of the European Space Agency will take place in Paris again next November, will be the perfect opportunity to boost this solidarity in Europe, but outside Europe as well, and to accelerate the operational implementation of our ambitions. At the Senate, we have decided to renew our commitment to public space policies and inter-parliamentary cooperation. This is why the Senate is chairing this year the European Inter-parliamentary Space Conference, whose plenary session took place yesterday, and I even recognize some familiar faces in this room. We debated on the theme of access to space and sustainable use of space and adopted a joint resolution that summarizes our main position. Today, we are continuing our debates in another format for inter-parliamentary cooperation dedicated to the economic, scientific, and societal contribution of space applications, and we look forward to hearing your respective presentation, and I'm very curious of that. Thank you again for your participation. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. So very few words. So on behalf of CNES, the French Space Agency, we had the pleasure, the honor to organize jointly with IAF this conference which is coming. I just want, as it was said earlier, just to, well, not to give you final figures, but the number of delegates we will have in Paris is just amazing. We are above 8,500 people. There will be many people also coming on Wednesday for a public open day in the conference. So it's really an amazing success. And well, the conference, the question is still open, but I mean, in terms of attendance at least, and I hope that the conference itself will be also a great success. And this is very important because it shows that there is a lot of interest today from the industry, but also from the public to space, and this is absolutely key. And of course, when we are talking about space, public opinion, we also need, of course, a very strong support and a lot of discussions with you, ministers, members of parliaments, decision makers, because we have not only to convince you to invest in space, and this is part of course, of our job every day, but it's not only that. It's also the fact that we have to explain. And I fully agree with you with non-technical words. We have to really explain all the interest of space. Space is a cornerstone of policy decisions today. And I will take only one small example to make it short. From time to time, I hear discussions about the fact, well, how is it legitimate to have space activities at the time where we endanger Earth and where there are climate issues and so on. And I just want to remind everybody, and it's so important, that if you don't have space, if you don't have space assets up there, then you are not able to understand what's happening today on Earth. You are not able to say that the climate is going wrong. You are not able to monitor emissions of CO2, of methane today, and tomorrow you will be able, thanks to space asset, not only to monitor, but also to ensure a good regulation and to ensure that the policy you are deciding at parliaments are followed by the industry, are followed by people. So these are very simple examples, but really, I think it's really very important that we have this kind of meeting with members of parliaments, politicians, ministers, and space technicians, so that we have a good understanding, and it's really important for not only for us, but for the whole society. So thank you very much again for organizing this. Thank you very much for your invitation, and with a bit of advance, welcome to IAC.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as a member of the parliament of my country, Azerbaijan, I am really happy to have this opportunity to be with all of you first time in this very important platform, as it was mentioned, where MPs and ministers are getting together, and as a country of Azerbaijan with an emerging space country. So I am happy to share with you a very brief speech, few words about role of the MPs and also the events that we are going to host next year. So I am deeply honored to greet you all on behalf of the government of Azerbaijan. We parliamentarians are valuable partners to each other in ensuring the accountable, inclusive, participatory, transparent governance that's necessary to achieve sustainable development for all. Our parliament members are working under the motto, boosting the role of national parliaments in promoting global peace and sustainable development. I am sure that today's our parliamentary networking not only will contribute to solidarity between our countries, but also will establish close working relations with different parliamentary organizations of the world. More than a century ago, Azerbaijan declared independence, and with its elected parliament and cabinet of ministers, it became the first democratic state in the Muslim world. The cultural and political transformation of the country from religious to secular reached its peak during independence. Azerbaijan was the first Muslim nation and one of the first nations in the world to grant women the right to vote. Today, Azerbaijan is a politically and economically stable country. We managed to transform our country, the cradle of the oil industry, into energy, transportation, and communication hub of the region. For 2,000 years, ancient Silk Road has passed through modern day in Azerbaijan and shaped the history, culture, and tolerant outlook of the country. Building on this, regardless of the ethnicity, race, religion, disability, and gender, every citizen has equal rights. Today, we negotiate with the leading parliamentary members from all over the world in the space sector, establish close relations with various ministers and members of governmental entities. Our space strategy is a long-term oriented and highly prioritized at the state level. Space is a great resource. The satellite industry is an integral part of the science and technology and communication chain as well. Azerbaijan has become an active member of the World Space Club since 2013 after launching the first of its 3 satellites. As of 2013, Azerbaijan's accession to the Treaty on the Principles governing the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, ratified by our parliament and approved by the president, will expand its international cooperation links. This intergovernmental agreement helps accelerate the growth of the country's activities in the outer space from both economic as well as scientific point of view, and also serve as a form of intellectual potential and material and technical base in the space sector in Azerbaijan. Now, our country is preparing for the biggest space event, the 74th International Astronautical Congress in 2023. It means that International Astronautical Congress is coming back to our region after exactly half century. 50 years ago, the 24th Congress was held in Baku in 1973 by the initiative of our national leader, Heydar Aliyev. Both by content and number of participants, this Congress was more representative than all previous ones. More than 1,500 participants from 30 countries gathered at that event. All the respective ministers today, governmental agencies, and services of Azerbaijan take a great responsibility to host this prestigious platform in Baku in 2023. Our capital, Baku city, has all required infrastructure and successful track record of hosting more than 50 global events over the past few years. On behalf of our government, on behalf of the parliament, we invite members of the parliament and governmental representatives from all over the world to foster the dialogue on global scale at IAC 2023 in Baku, Azerbaijan. We are very much looking forward to showing you our marvelous city. I thank you all for your attention.
Madam Tilmans, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a real pleasure and a real honor to be with you, representing the Director General of the European Space Agency, Mr. Joseph Aschbacher, this morning. It's a particular pleasure for me because I'm in charge of European and external relations. So in principle, I'm one of those people in a space agency that is more focused on policy and addressing actually those interested in space but who do not know about space. And I will share with you a funny internal anecdote of ESA. Yesterday evening, I received a presentation that I should be using this morning. I've been spending 36 years in space, and I could not understand the presentation. So if I could not understand the presentation, I have doubts that you will understand the presentation. So if you allow me, I will use probably a little different angle, which would not be too much of an engineering angle, but a little bit more of a across-the-board angle to share that with you. But before, I would like to introduce the members of this distinguished panel, starting with Ms. Susan Close, Deputy Premier, South Australia, in the Government of South Australia. It's a real pleasure to have you. The European Space Agency has a very close relationship with Australia, and I would recall that we even launched European launchers from Australia decades ago, and that today we are really joining forces in space services and applications that we shall discuss on this panel. So I'm particularly pleased to have you on board. Thank you very much. Member of the European Parliament, Nicholas Ninas, and it's a particular pleasure because we have a champion for space at the European Parliament who is really bringing and injecting extraordinary actions in support of space, and I really hope you will share with us your priorities, and thank you for being with us. Ms. Sophie Primas, who just spoke, and thank you very much for being on board as well, from the French Senate. Ms. Sarah Ryglewski of the Parliament of Germany, who's the Minister of State in the Chancellery, Coordinator of the Federal State Relations. Thank you very much for being here. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Klaus-Peter Wilsch, Chairperson of the Aerospace Group at the Parliament of Germany, and also a champion of our cause, and thank you very much for being with us. So, if I manage to use a presentation which I don't understand, Madame Tilmans, I will use 7 minutes now. So, in a nutshell, this is the European Space Agency, 22 member states. We sit today in Paris, France, a key member state, driving ESA, Germany, a key member state, driving ESA, but I have the pleasure to see many other representatives of the member states in the room. 22 member states, around 7 billion euros budget. We are a full spectrum space agency addressing from astrophysics or a contribution to the James Webb Space Telescope that you've heard probably so often about recently, to transporting and using launchers, and of course looking across the board at space applications and services that can make such a big difference in your daily lives, actually. And let me maybe spend 1 minute. The traditional way for a space agency to address you is to tell you that we do Earth observation and we produce terabytes of data. Yes, we do telecommunications at ESA, by the way, and integrated applications, meaning we fuse the capability to observe the Earth with telecommunications, with navigation, to stand a chance to actually bring services to the next level for the decision makers. And this is not an easy action. It's a complicated action to fuse this, but this is really a major trend in space activities. But space agencies, and let me see, this is an important point from the outset, are only one part of the spectrum of the space activities. In Europe, we have the member states, the key actors. We have the European Space Agency, but we have the European Union, which has taken on board space, which is absolutely instrumental as a proof that space can actually meet the political demand, can meet top-level objectives, and this is really crucial. But we also have industry, we have new space companies, and this whole continuum of activity is what we have to embrace nowadays, which is also a complicated task, and that's exactly what we would like to address this morning. Very quickly, this is a typical view graph from a space agency that you would not understand. It is populated with all kinds of images and text, which are basically there to tell you that we are now faster at delivering new services. One example, during the COVID pandemic, we created a dashboard using Earth observation images to monitor aircraft traffic, the stationing of aircraft at airports that proved to be so challenging when everything had to stop during the pandemic, the slowing down of the economic activity during the pandemic that we could measure with our satellites, and we could provide this critical information to nation states that were in great need of understanding what was happening to their economy at the time of the pandemic. These type of services we can provide. But as Monsieur Baptiste said, we're not just monitoring the Earth with satellites. We're trying to be part of what you need, which is how can you mitigate, how can you integrate these data and services in new solutions for you, which are easy to understand. And let me, Madam Tilmans, also address a point. We very often address members of parliaments, national parliaments, European parliaments. They don't know about space, and they don't necessarily want to know about space. What they would like to know is what we can bring forward to them. And so basically this view graph, which is also too busy, but summarizes a major point, which is that we're on the verge of a new age in space, which is to fuse technologies and to fuse applications in order to go to direct solutions without those not knowing about space needing to know about space. And if I can be very precise with that, if you are having in your country droughts and water cycle challenges, you need to better manage irrigation, or you need to better manage the full understanding on how to save water in your country, we have a solution for you, which is based on the capacity of satellites to observe water, which is the capacity to measure the ground temperature, which is the capacity to actually monitor a structure. And in the last 2 minutes, I have actually, I will skip that one. I'm sorry if that works. Yes. And this is to show you that the subject of this particular panel is really to address space for public services, sustainability, rural environment, and cities. We do have the capacity to actually monitor and provide information for urban infrastructure and for rural and agricultural needs. And the title of this panel for a space agency is wrong. It's not, rural environment versus cities. It's rural environment and cities. And we're actually, with space technology, able to integrate and provide this type of services. Those are examples of use of space and satellites to monitor road infrastructure, for example, to such a level that we can actually give local authorities information that, be careful, you should fix here, because otherwise your road infrastructure will be deeply damaged. And I'm happy, actually, because that's my last chart. We relate to more and more sectors, and energy is one of them. Energy is a big subject in Europe, but I think it is a big subject worldwide. And that's my conclusion, fusing all the technologies that we master with the support of artificial intelligence now, we can actually be much smarter with solutions for the electrical grid management, or for actually the monitoring of emission of methanes from companies that see their infrastructure damage in a particular point. We can tell these companies, we're watching this, you'd better fix this because you're polluting the earth. So, Madam Tilmans, I will conclude this. Now, it was in a nutshell, what kind of new age space services we're providing now. New Space Age is here for that, and very happy to contribute then to this debate. And let me maybe now turn to you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Very happy that you can share with us your views on this.
Thank you so much. As was mentioned at the beginning, I am Susan Close. I'm the Deputy Premier, the Deputy Leader of the Parliament, of the government in South Australia. I think I'm the only Australian representative unless someone jumps up. So I will try to speak on behalf of Australia, but with a bias for the best state in Australia, which is, of course, South Australia, where the Space Agency is located for the whole nation. I would like to start by by remercier nos hôtes en France et à Paris. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be travelling. We had our borders literally closed for something like 2 years. This is my first overseas trip since the pandemic, and to be here in Paris is a joy. And thank you for allowing this. I struggle with the language of always being in English. Obviously, it's my native language, but I'm grateful to be able to speak in English to a number of people who speak so many different languages, but I'm also always slightly embarrassed that my language is the dominant one. I come from a country and a state that has significant challenges, all of which are answered at least partially by space technology. My state is a very big one with a very small population. My nation is a continent. If you look at the weather patterns that we have very tropical, equatorial, all the way down through vast deserts to fringe life by the sea. And when you get to Tasmania, it's very cold. The water comes straight from Antarctica, and there's regularly snow there. So our nation is affected by every kind of climate variability you can imagine, and then you put climate change on top, and we have very significant challenges. We have a relatively small population given the size. In my state, we're about 100,000 square kilometres, which is about 380,000 square miles, and we have 1.7 million people. 1.3 million live in the city, in the capital city. So very, very thinly spread population. We are highly dependent on our natural resources, too dependent economically, but we produce far more food than we can eat, so we're an exporter of food. We're an excellent exporter of wine, with due respect to our hosts in France, who are also excellent at wine. And we have vast reserves of natural resources in the form of various, not only the traditional minerals, but increasingly the rare earths and the essential minerals required for creating renewable energy products. All of that requires us to be better at space. The main challenge for us is to have a more sophisticated economy that is more dependent on what's in our brains rather than what's under the soil. And space is exactly the kind of high technology sector that will help drive that increasing complexity in our economy. And it's one that's attractive to young people. Unlike defence, which in South Australia in particular we're very strong in, we are the shipbuilding state for the nation, we struggle to get young people interested in studying STEM in order to work in defence. We have no trouble enthusing young people to study STEM if they can be part of space. And so we are using that as strongly as we can to encourage young kids to stick with the maths, to understand technology and engineering, and to continue all the way through to finishing school and getting into university on the basis that space is an industry that they can have a career in. They may well then wander into other careers, but it's the one that gets them most enthusiastic. We also need to consume the product of space. As has been so eloquently said, the information that we can get from satellites is utterly essential to managing a state the size of ours and a nation the size of ours with such a small population. Understanding what's happening with our native vegetation cover, our natural environment cover, understanding how to manage water better in our agricultural resources, knowing what's happening with the drying and then the flooding of our rivers. You may be aware that Pakistan, of course, is having the most terrible catastrophe with flooding. We've had flooding on the eastern seaboard of Australia for essentially the last 3 months, but on and off for the last 2 years. Insurance companies are starting to say they do not want to cover whole areas where people live in Australia because they're flooded too frequently, although previously they were hardly flooded at all. Being able to better understand the flow of water and having advanced knowledge of that is utterly essential to making our life sustainable in those areas, and it can only come not only through the space industry generally, but sovereign space capability. In South Australia, we're at the moment making our first government-owned satellite, which will be launched next year. I'm very excited to be part of that launch. We're doing that because we want to prove we can build it, but we're also doing that so that the data that is collected comes to us, and at the moment we have to buy access to other people's satellite. And I think one thing we've learned through the pandemic, and there were many things, but one thing is the importance of sovereignty and not being dependent. At an Australian level, the intersection between space and defence is utterly crucial. So we have a federated model of government. As a state, I'm interested in managing my land, and I'm interested in having a strong economy. As a nation, we're interested in security, and the use of space in understanding the geopolitical changes in our region is utterly essential. And a driver for faster modernisation than we're currently capable of. So we think we're pretty fast, and we think that the thing we're putting up there is pretty modern, and a year later it's out of date already, but it's got a 15-year lifespan. So trying to manage the complexity of updating technology is something that is very much at the forefront of our minds when we consider in particular the implications for defence and for understanding what's around us. But above all, the importance for us, particularly at a state level, is how space interacts with climate change. Mostly in understanding what's there, what's happening on the ground, but also understanding the possibilities of the way in which technology can help us deal with climate change. How can we perhaps get access to the renewable energy of the sun from space and beam it down? Very exciting technology, very new. Is there going to be a role for space in geoforming as warming gets out of control? Controversial question, but one that we have to be interrogating. We're all feeling the effects of extreme weather events. We will only experience those more, in my opinion, in the near future. Finally, there's the question of, I noticed the tag Space for All. How we make the value of space accessible for all in society and for all nations is very important to us. We are geographically in a very important and at times unstable region. Our neighbours in the Pacific, which includes Nouvelle-Calédonie, but also many independent nations, have not been looked after by Australia as well as they might have been in recent times. Dominique? And we are wanting to better accept our responsibilities as good neighbours, and that includes being able to give access to the kind of data that comes from space that's essential for managing the impact of rising sea levels on Pacific nations. In our own country, we have, like every other, experience inequalities, and we're very proud to have the oldest living culture. 60,000 years Aboriginal people have had continuous culture in the nation of Australia. Their communities are often, however, quite impoverished. There is information to be provided through space to assist Aboriginal communities in managing their land and their water resources. So too is the possibility of being host to launches. And there is an Aboriginal community I visited a month ago, Kuniba, far west coast of South Australia, quite isolated. They are the host of one of our early launch efforts for civilian launches, and they love it. It drew attention, it drew people came and spent money, everyone was watching. The launches didn't go well, incidentally. They were one of those launches where everyone waited and nothing happened, and then everyone waited and something happened but it blew up, and then everyone came, and it made the Aboriginal community a bit wealthier and a lot more engaged in the rest of society. And so being able to use space for all is a very important element of what we're doing. It's not easy in politics, though, and I think that will be touched on in the discussion, to convince our population that space is worth investing in. So how we talk about it as politicians really matters, and I hope in the roundtable discussion we might get to a little bit of those challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you really expressed it so well. I mean, this is exactly all the challenges that we have to meet. I would like to recall just a factual information. In 1999, CNES and ESA co-created the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters. And it was at the time, you know, this telephone line that you can call and say, I have a disaster at home, can you help me? And the Charter is a mechanism to task satellites immediately and then to provide not the images, not the data, but the information to those who are who have to address wildfires, flooding, earthquakes, technological disasters, and etc. And Monsieur Baptiste, I think we can say today that the Charter is more used than ever before. I think this summer with the heat waves, with the wildfires in Europe and all around the world, the flooding in Sudan, in Pakistan. And so I'm just saying that we have gained some experience also to provide not the data, but the information that is required for those people who need to act on the information. Thank you so much for bringing this. We have Nick. So Nicholas will please. I mean, this is your turn.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, honourable colleagues and dear friends, of course, for coming here together once again on the big issue on everything related to space. So my name is Nicholas Nines. I'm a member of the European Parliament, and just for your information, I'm actually, in the committee on industry and energy, so for space relations, but also in the committee coordinator for regional development. And in regional development, what we're trying to do is to ensure cohesion in between Europe. So to ensure that that from south to north, from east to west, you have the same chances. You have good education, you have good jobs, you have the possibilities you need to pursue a fulfilling life. And I think while others ask me, how does this go together, the regions, the rural areas, and space, I think it just makes sense. It is the perfect bridge, because space enables especially those regions that are not benefiting yet from good infrastructure, from closeness to harbors or other ports, from natural resources, to participate in development and in economic benefits. And this is something that we need to harness more and that we need to extend. The European Union has, of course, multiple space programs. We have the Copernicus program that you probably know, where we're delivering data for everyone for free to use. We're having Galileo, which is we can call it maybe GPS Plus or something like this, and is also available for everybody to use. We are now talking about we have EGNOS, of course, which is helping us with the disasters that you've spoken about, and we are now discussing a new constellation in low Earth orbit, or maybe MEO as well, in order to ensure more economic usage and especially the providing of internet for all in Europe, but also, and I'm very happy that we are going in this direction, to also include the African continent in this as well, because I think this is a certain responsibility to use space not just for your own sake, but also for the sake of others, because in my understanding, space is a common heritage of all mankind. And in this discussion where we're standing right now, we are looking at how can we use space to enable rural areas to benefit from the internet. How can we ensure, or this is, I think, the thing that we have to ensure, to show people that space is not just, going out there, looking a little bit around, I don't know, inventing the Teflon pan or something, but really solving problems from citizens in day-to-day life. And that is the internet, because a lot of people don't have access to good connectivity and don't have the access that they need to participate in a life, especially what we saw during the corona pandemic. They can't travel, they can't work from home, and they can't see their kids or grandkids if they're not accessed to proper internet. And the other part is then, of course, economic affairs, and this is a question of how we manage to use the data that we have. We have Frederick has mentioned that we are sending down 25 terabytes of data regularly. So we need to use this data, and I think this is important to not just give it to the big companies that have the possibilities to do something with it, but to enable everyday citizens to use this data and do something with it. Be creative and use it as their resource for new solutions to the problems that we have had. I'll give you two examples. One of them is fairly easy. We have cities that want to monitor their trees. You know, they have trees in the cities, very easy problem. Usually they go around and they count them and they check on them. So a lot of people are walking around the cities counting trees. You can do this, you can solve this issue very easily with space data. And while doing that, you're improving not just the economy, but also reducing, of course, the burden on the taxpayers, because they don't have to pay for all the people counting trees. The other example is a little bit more important, I think, because it is on the matter of crisis. And it's not just responding appropriately to crises, but also preventing them from happening. We have been with the committee to the Ahrtal and the region which had flooding in the last year in Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands. And in this region, we found out that the people were not informed about the danger that was going on, even though we did have the data to know previously that the soil was not capable of catching any more water. So it was knowable that there would a flood be occurring in upcoming future. And I spoke to a friend actually of mine who is working in this region as water specialist, and they did not receive any data. And so we're trying at the moment to bring them together with all the information from space, everything that we get from Copernicus and EGNOS, to let them know before the catastrophe hits that there's something to come, to take the appropriate measures. And that's the point and the bridge that we still need to take, especially as politicians, I think, to bring together the people who know what the problems on the ground are, from the cities, from the regions, to bring together the specialists from this room, from ESA, from the national agencies, from all the organizations that have satellites and have the knowledge, and bring together those people who can design and program solutions to help with to use the data then appropriately for the problems. If we can achieve that, I think we will never have to argument again why we have to invest in space, because then it's becoming very, very clear that this investments that we're doing is not just flying around again in low Earth orbit, but that we are really solving everyday's problems and that we're bringing benefits to the citizens. And this is, I think, the most important task that we are up to in the future. Let me compliment on one last point. I'm not overturning my time, I see. But I think it's important that we as Europeans also come together on the idea. I mentioned the programs that we have from the EU. They are ideally complemented with a lot of individual national programs. For example, a German program in which we go into even more detail about the tree situation or about the soil situation and everything, and we can complement all this data. I think it's important for us as Europeans to bring all this information more and more together, to harmonize it, to organize it more strictly. But also, I am here speaking in front of you not just as a member of the European Parliament, but also representing the idea of member states coming together on a common cause. And this is something that we can and must extend even further to the international community, because we have so many important problems. It's not just on the problems on the Earth, but also the problems that we have in space, which are, for example, of course, this matter of space debris and others. And we need to solve these problems together. We need to come on this again together and not just talk about regulation, but also projects that we can share effectively together. There are a lot of issues that we can solve. It's the question of reducing the amount of space debris. It's also the question of whether we can produce energy in space and help us with defeating climate change. It's the question of how can we go further beyond and use the resources that we have in space. All of these questions are too big for every single member state, no matter how big they are. They are, though, solvable if we come together and make this a humanity-wide project, because space really is not just a nice place to go for single multi-billionaires, but it is a common heritage of all mankind, and let us treat it this way. Thank you very much for coming together, and I'm looking very much forward for the discussions with all of you.
Thank you.
we're ready to take on the challenge that you're raising, and I think collectively in Europe, and that if I can speak just as a citizen of the European Union, it feels great to see that you are on this, with this drive and energy. Thank you very much, really. Mrs. Sophie Primas from the French Senate, please.
Thank you very much. Listening at you, Nicolas, I think that an insurance company should finance heavily space. Okay. Let me, dear colleagues, let me be very concrete this morning. Today, I would like to talk to you about the role of the space sector in the energy transition of our territories and company, a topic that have, to me, great development opportunities in the future. As you know, we are currently experiencing an unprecedented energy crisis. We must accelerate our efforts to ensure a massive decarbonation of our economy and encourage companies, administration, and citizens to change their practices. To tackle this challenge, local authorities from large urban areas to small local communities are on the front line. A recent Senate report on the impact of high energy prices on local public authorities have pointed to a more than doubling of energy bills for 3/4 of local authorities, with increases in energy bills ranging from 30% to 300%. So there is a challenge. To face the energy challenges that await our companies and municipalities, and while the contribution of the space sector seems far away from this issue, I will try to show how research and innovation in space can, in a prospective way, bring us some answers. I am convinced that space research is beneficial to the economy on Earth, especially innovation that reduce energy consumption and use cleaner and more efficient resources. Space data can be used to optimize the production and distribution of electricity from renewable energy sources. This is especially true for solar panel farms and those installed on the roofs of buildings, which can be easily observed by satellites from space. The energy and public utilities sector are increasingly using space data to support the energy transition and provide more efficient and lower cost services. In practical terms, space data can be used to identify optimal conditions for installing solar panels, track electricity production, or even detect anomalies that are not due to weather conditions. In other words, it's a tool for municipalities to optimize their production and distribution of renewable electricity. The development of such space application, especially for public energy network managers, should therefore be promoted. Solar energy is also increasingly used in space, for example, to produce the electricity needed to operate satellites in orbit. The objective is to develop more sustainable uses of space and to enable more sustainable space exploration as well. Research and development in space transportation is particularly interesting because innovations aim to develop new ways to produce energy. You've just said that. In France, the startup Gamma Space is developing today a solar sail project. Solar sail, this is something that once launched and displayed in space will use the energy produced by the reflection of the sun's rays to drive itself. I don't know if this project is more of science fiction or a real scientific breakthrough. However, the first prototype solar sail will be tested by the end of the year to launch a small observation satellite from the United States. In any case, this project has at least two interests for research in energy transition. For the space sector, the step-by-step development for a more distant, more sustainable, and especially fuel-free space exploration. For other sectors of activity like transport and mobility, the development of electric propulsion rather than chemical propulsion. The research on operating autonomy in space is also very interesting. In space, we must learn to live in extreme conditions and in closed and self-sufficient spaces. In the context of international revival of manned flights and the grace for lunar exploration, Several innovations have been supported to develop closed and circular energy production systems. You may have heard of the French startup Spartan Space, whose prototypes were on display last year at the French pavilion of the Dubai World Expo. This startup is working on an ambitious lunar habitat project, which requires a self-sufficient system for producing energy, recycling water, and limiting carbon dioxide emissions. For this purpose, this company is working in collaboration with the French Research Center and the Air Liquide Group to develop self-sufficient energy habitats, a fine example of cooperation. Once again, I don't know if this project will come to life and when, but it at least accelerates research on autonomous energy production and the reducing of energy consumption in infrastructures, challenges for which communities and companies here on Earth must be even better prepared and for which they must be even more supported. I would like to share with you the exciting project by showing you a quick video. If it's possible, yeah.
The moon is the gateway to our solar system. The hostile environment on the lunar surface will challenge us to develop technologies to build a sustainable presence on the moon. For the return to the moon, space agencies are targeting the South Pole. With the presence of ice, permanent exposure to the sun, and constant radio contact with Earth, the South Pole region is a perfect candidate for establishing a permanent lunar settlement. However, accessing these points of interest will be challenging. Crewed spacecrafts that will bring astronauts back to the moon need to land on flat and safe sites. But these are far away from sites of interest. This is why astronauts will be depending on outposts to increase the range of their expeditions. And that's where we come in. Meet the EuroHab, developed by Spartan Space. EuroHab is an inflatable module designed as a payload. It will be used as a secondary habitat or a safe haven for astronauts on the moon. Being brought by a robotic lander to the surface allows the EuroHab to be placed on riskier landing spots close to the points of interest. With strategically positioned outposts, the range of exploration missions will be increased exponentially. And as EuroHab is designed to be reusable and resupplied, it can be operated for several crew rotations and further increase the potential for exploration. The outpost can host 2 astronauts for a period of 2 weeks, providing them shelter from the harsh environment of the moon. In addition, it will be used as a teleoperated science station by supporting instruments that are linked to EuroHab. Scientists could continue to measure the lunar environment or even analyze samples without astronauts inside the habitat. More than a technological leap, EuroHab will unlock new possibilities in the future of space exploration. EuroHab will be the first permanent settlement on the moon.
Thank you. This is very encouraging project. So you understand I am deeply convinced that the space sector has a role to play in the energy transition here on Earth. Nevertheless, I think that we really need to strengthen our partnership to ensure an equitable sharing of knowledge resulting from research and space conquest advances, because space should not be, as you said, a private club. but an open space that should help us improving our living condition here on Earth, in Paris and wherever in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. As a space community, and in particular at ESA, we addressed space and the energy transition in the early 1990s, I remember, but we were not so well configured at the time, while today, and I think you highlighted this very well, we are much better configured to actually stand a chance to work on this very effectively and providing solutions. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. Ms. Sarah Riglewski will address us now.
Thank you very much, and I want to express how happy I'm to be here. And first of all, I want to thank the IAF very much for organizing this event for members of parliaments and governments, because it has in 2018, I guess, my home city Bremen hosted the IAC, and for me it was a very inspirational event, because like we heard in the statements before, we all know that space exploration is something we only can do together. But as we heard before, solving global problems we only can do together. And I think events like that, where decision makers from all over the world are coming together, is really, really important for the topics we are dealing actually with. And like Niklas Nina said before, we often have the problem that a lot of people in our countries, in my country it's like that, they don't understand why space is so important. But it's important because a lot of problems we actually have are we can only solve when we use space exploration and space technology, and that's I would like to talk about. We all knew about the tense geopolitical situation, and in that situation, maintaining the health of the environment remains an overriding task for policymakers and decision makers. Combating climate change is the greatest challenge in this context, and this is also the key aim of the German government. Climate change, as we all know, is a reality. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen by 42% since the Industrial Revolution. 42%. If we are to meet the 2-degree target of the Paris Agreement, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions as quickly and as efficient as possible. The Green Deal launched by the European Commission therefore aims to reduce net emissions of greenhouse gases to zero by 2050. In Germany, we would like to move even faster and be climate neutral by 2045. To achieve this, Germany, like other countries, needs, among other factors, reliable data on understand processes on Earth from a global perspective. And satellites play a very important role in this respect. Observation from space can provide a comprehensive, consistent, and globally comparable data set. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, space-based Earth observation is indispensable for research into climate process, as well as for monitoring and evaluating these processes and for addressing climate change adaptation. Especially because we all have to deal in our countries with groups who still deny climate change or the human responsibility for climate change. Because of that, it's also a vital element in international cooperation on climate monitoring and environmental policy within Europe and the United Nations. We welcome the expertise that companies from Europe contribute to this cooperation. Satellites make the comprehensive global observation of the climate system possible. They measure the greenhouse gas content in the atmosphere, determine the extent and impact of deforestation and other land use changes, and they monitor changes in glaciers and polar ice. Satellites also provide useful images of natural disasters, which are becoming ever more frequent in Central Europe as a result of extreme weather events brought about by climate change. Satellites are a vital factor in fighting and handling the already existent consequences of global climate change. The devastating floods in Germany and other countries in Europe in the summer of 2021 reminded us of how important it is to be able to gain an overview of the situation when disaster strikes. The German radar satellites TerraSAR-X and Tandem-X can spot how far flood extends. And satellite data also helps us view the effects of climate change and develop adaptation strategies. Extreme weather events and droughts will increasingly affect harvesters. We all experienced that during the last 2 summers in Europe. The efficient and sustainable management of natural resources is therefore essential. The use of Earth observation data and satellite navigation in farm machinery, for example, enables and helps farmers to use the right dosage of fertilizers, pesticides, and irrigation. There are more examples. Satellites also play a key role in the energy transition. They accelerate expansions of renewable energy is a declared aim of the new German government. With satellite data, we can better verify the viability of potential energy production sites, we've heard that before, and optimize the operation of solar and wind farms and provide input for planning of the electrical grid. German space policy is geared to practical applications. We want to use space to help us tackle the challenges of our time. With our national program for space and innovation, the German government is therefore funding Earth observation missions that provide data which is needed as a basis for coping with climate change. In addition, we are supporting the development of applications for science, industry, and the public administration so that useful information can be gained from the data. Let me give you 2 examples. The first example is the German environmental mission, the MMoP. And I'm a little bit proud because it was built in Bremen, which is not only the smallest federal state in Germany, but the most spacified federal state of Germany. And it was launched this year on April the 1st. This mission will help us monitor and cope with climate change and its effects. The innovation sensors of the MMoP satellite will let us see the Earth through new eyes. By collecting hyperspectral data in more than 220 spectral bands. Thanks to this technology, it is possible to analyze vegetation, aquatic systems, and terrain in much greater detail. Remote sensing can be used to spot vegetation stress and nutrient and water deficiencies. MMoP is a pioneering mission because it will help us make global land use more sustainable, highlight the effects of climate change, and combat ongoing environmental degradation. Data from MMoP will, for example, also help increase food security on our planet and protect groundwater. The second example are the joint German-US mission GRACE and its successors. By detecting minimal changes in the Earth's gravity field, they have enabled researchers to measure the amount of water in the global hydrological cycle with unprecedented accuracy. This data allows us to better understand the effects of climate change, the melting of the ice caps, and the changes in sea level. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many aspects of observing climate change that we cannot accomplish alone, but only together with our partners. For years, Germany has played a leading role in the ESA. We intend to continue this engagement at the upcoming ESA Ministerial Council. Europe operates the world's best environmental satellite program, Copernicus, and we have heard a lot about that before. Because of that, I don't want to express it any further, but I want to give you just one topical example for the use of Copernicus. Copernicus data has proven an increase in algae blooms in the Oder River, and it's being used by scientists to help find out why so many fish have died in recent weeks. And there's another aspect. We had a huge discussion with our neighbor state, Poland, about the reasons for that, for the dying of the fish in the river, and to have good data is a basis to solve struggle with others, and it's also important about surveillance of climate agreement, and maybe in the future about a debate how to sanction if somebody doesn't compels to that agreements. Let me give you just one last example about how important satellite data is for all of us. We have already heard about Galileo, and Galileo is not only a navigation system for our comfort, but it also gives us a chance to reduce environmental affection and to reduce CO2 emissions, because it makes transport and logistics more efficient, and that's the last example I want to give. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and one last effect of that meeting is that I am forced to improve my English. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No, your English is very good, actually. Thank you very much. 3 brief reactions. I mean, reaction number 1 is that Germany is really a leader at the European Space Agency for propelling us in Earth observation from science to applications. And your role is absolutely critical in this. And you brought something which makes me think that we never have to forget to invest in science for climate change monitoring, because for the future of the methane monitoring and CO2 monitoring missions and etc., we need continued investment in science in order to improve then the operational missions. Point number 2 is the data acceptability internationally. We shall all work on this, because we have to go to the next level to exactly implement what you described to us this morning. And finally, I wanted to reassure you that Bremen is definitely known, not only for its space capabilities, but I can confirm to you, not only in Europe, but internationally, there is at the moment on a launch pad in Florida, a launcher that is about to be launched to the moon, and Bremen is there and allowed us to have an ESA logo on that launcher. So Bremen is definitely well known everywhere. Mr. Klaus-Peter Wilsch, please, for your presentation.
Oh yeah, no. Yes, now it works. Thanks a lot. First of all, let me thank Professor Pascale Ehrenfreund, the President, for inviting us and giving us the floor here with this panel. And second, let me give my thanks to Dominique Tilmans. It's hard to imagine an international space policy event without Dominique Tilmans. We know each other since 10, 15 years or something, and met on a lot of places and are friends. So keep in touch with the space community. We would miss you if we wouldn't see you again. And let me also give our thanks to Sophie Primas for hosting us. We had our European Inter-parliamentarian space conference in the Senate the last 2 days. And today we came over here to the convention center. You did a hell of a job in organizing all this in the Senate and also here for our community. And let me give our thanks to you for this, being a good host. Okay, we have to talk about space for public services sustainability, rural environments versus cities. It's not really a versus, I think, because the need of data, the need for space applications is in both possibilities to settle as well in the cities when you think of congestion problems, traffic organizing and all that, as in the rural areas where you may have advantages you never dreamed of in former times. But first of all, let me make one point in the beginning. You probably know that Heraclitus, the ancient Greek philosopher, said that the war is the father of all things. And this is a lecture we just are really well having to learn. When you look at Ukraine and the brutal Russian attack on this country, you get the consciousness that, of course, freedom and self-determination is the most important point for sustainability. And of course, we can see that a lot of military success on the battlefield depends on actual and good data. The Ukrainians are, they get those good data from the US, from French intelligence organizations, and they are therefore able to localize the enemy, to localize his movements and to destroy him, hit him and destroy him, which is the most important thing in this situation when you're under attack. So there's something going on. Yeah. How do we come to all this? How do we come to this data we need? Also, of course, for civil in the main field for civil appliance, we have highly integral and interdependent organization of our public room, of our cities, of our rural areas, and digitalization is going on. I was, when we were talking about in Germany about the 5G rollout, I was always very eager to say we have to have also satellites. We have to have constellations in that field, because we won't be able to put a transmission tower every 300 meters or something in order to get the net close enough, but we need it also in the rural area. Sarah already mentioned smart farming. I have really very down-to-earth appliances in my neighborhood where one farmer is testing new ways to really smart farming, to exact dosage of fertilizer, of herbicides and all that, which is on the rural field in Germany, roughly 60% of the population lives in rural areas, in communities with less than 50,000 inhabitants. So it's a rural country too. So this is the one point I would like to make, but also for all regional and local policy, the policy makers, for the planners, it is very vital to have those data. You have, of course, landscape fragmentation as a societal challenge, and you see the settlement patterns. We saw the demonstration in the pictures Isa showed us in the beginning. We have good data, and we can develop our outcomes from that. Our DLR has, with a global urban footprint, the tools or the platform to develop tools, knotting those data together. Just think of some projects or some very concrete examples. When you have a working 5G coverage, and of course you use the modern GNS generated data for your planning, for land use planning, city planning, but very practical example, blue light surfaces. They may be helped in their emergency role when police, fire service, or medical services come close. Come close to the traffic light. They transmit that they are coming, and the traffic light turns to red in order to keep things going. Or for the rural areas, we have mostly won't have it remarked it until now. We have in the e-call system in all European mobile cars, vehicles. That means when you're somewhere and your car doesn't move any longer, and you have no signs of life, you get a contact to an automatic contact to some rescue point, and this is really for parts of my constituency where I'm living. I was always joking. I said, when you have an accident there, you're out of blood until the first guy gets notice of that. So this is really life-saving what we have there. We use it, just the last example, for making public transportation more efficient. You know, always the problem if people will be ready to change the means of transportation, it must become comfortable. And always a problem is the last mile. How do you get the people to the point where they really want to come to? And now we have, this is also supported by the federal government, a system in my constituency where there is the composition of the driving team by algorithms, and they guarantee that we have a stop every 300 meters, which is great. Yeah? And so we are still working on it, but we are quite hopeful that we have a lot of data that have to be used because we cannot even imagine what for all purposes this will be useful for us. That's my message. Take care of the data, use them. It's a really a big value we have there, and we, as ESA and as national space agencies, mobilize it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for bringing also these concrete examples. That's extremely useful, I think, for the consideration of this panel. We have 5-minute opportunity for questions, so it's a very short Q&A session, but would any of you would like to raise any question for this panel?
We give the 5 minutes to
Or should we give the 5 minutes to Giorgio Sacoccia?
We can ask questions at the end of the 3 panels.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so maybe the question answer session will be at the end of the panels. I'm told that we have to stay as a panel just for 1 more minute for a group photo. Is that correct? We stand up? Okay.
So we have the pleasure to have Giorgio Sacoccia, Giorgio, President Italian Space Agency, who will moderate this panel, and I give you the floor immediately, Giorgio.
Thank you very much, Dominique. I hope you can hear me. Good morning, everyone, honorable ministers and members of parliament and dear colleagues. I am actually very pleased to introduce and moderate a session which I think is extremely important, because we are going to talk during this session about disaster and security management from space. Here is really where we see space that comes into action to serve our planet, and I think is very, very important that politicians are fully aware of the potential, incredible potential that already today and in the future space technology will have to serve this specific field. Now I'm going to, in the spirit of democracy, just to keep also my 10-minute slot, I'm going to introduce one by one the speakers once they will talk, if you allow me. So I have prepared a little presentation to set the scene on what we are talking about during this session, and to give you some examples of what space can do when we talk about disaster and security management. I suppose I can use this, yeah. And to explain what we are talking about, this chart shows you on the left side the existing and, say, being prepared fleet of Earth observation satellites that Italy is actually owning or in the process of developing, because in our country we are fully convinced that Earth observation from space is really an incredible instrument to support our planet. And I'm sure you are well aware of that. On the right side of the picture, of the chart, you see all the application, at least a macroscopic view of all the application that you have when you produce data from observing our planet from space. So emergency risk management is only one part of that, but we'll focus on that today. I mean, Italy is a beautiful country, but it's extremely fragile, as many other beautiful countries in the world. So I think it's not by chance that we dedicate a lot of attention to what it means managing, handling situation of emergencies. We have to do this to protect people, to protect infrastructure, but also to protect cultural heritage, which is, of course, belongs to all countries. And this is something that I think is also very important to be understood. Thanks to space activities, we can also defend our history and preserve it for the future generations. When we look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, a part of the obvious one that space activities serve, when we think about disaster management and security management, I would like to focus your attention on three of the development goals, which are quality education and sustainable cities and communities and partnership for the goals. Why am I highlighting those one in particular? Because when we deal with emergency and crisis management, it is really when, it has been mentioned already, when different communities, different countries act together and prepare the future also, future generations. So maybe we don't think immediately about that, but really emergency management, etc., prepare the scene for those three very important goals. But looking more in detail of some example of what can be done from space, in this chart you see some of the say, intervention that one important asset, space asset we have in our country, which is the Cosmos Skymed constellation, is a dual-use constellation which is used for civil and security applications. I mean, we see some of the events where unfortunately, we had to intervene over the years. As you can see, they are really, I mean, you don't see any borders of intervention there. You don't see any constraints. When we talk about emergency and crisis, we are there as well as all the other countries that can provide important data for emergencies. And so, but I will show some specific examples. So, once more, this is at least an example of different specific type of applications, but looking more in detail. For example, this is a typical case where observing Earth from space, you can immediately intervene. It's not a natural disaster, unfortunately. We're talking about an artificial, homemade, generated disasters. But in the case, for example, of a oil spill, the rapid intervention from space allow us to prevent terrible pollution situation, of course, catastrophic degeneration of the ecosystem in the area. These are examples that have been all monitored by the Cosmos SkyMed constellation. You can see here overlapped on a Google map the different charts of observation in the moment of the crisis to prevent indeed I mean, to basically guide also the intervention of ships or confinement of the spill, and also to understand where further investigation had to be given to, in particular, for what concerns the biodiversity that was in danger. So here you can see some more, I mean, some spotlights of those interventions. In particular, I mean, the Cosmos SkyMed is a radar satellite, and radar satellite allows really to look with great evidence to the modifications in time or specific situations. Another subject, which of course is very easy, or at least we follow with a great attention, is a situation of volcanic eruptions or earthquakes. Again, something where unfortunately our country is particularly exposed to, and we can give examples to others. You see here, for example, the volcanic eruption in La Palma in Spain that we have been monitoring with great attention from space with Cosmos SkyMed. And the interesting thing was that in this case, it is not just a question of observing the phenomenon, but also to guide rescue teams and to indicate, following the path of the eruption, to indicate where maybe the lava could go, and to basically also guide possible evacuation, etc. This is an area where there has been a lot of evolvement with respect to the past. Yes, we have another satellite called Prisma, which operates in the hyperspectral domain, which, for example, which is certainly a phenomenal instrument to monitor fires. There was a I mean, we heard talking from Mrs. Close about the situation in Australia. They have been suffering as much as we do in Italy, in California, etc. Very big fires. This satellite has an interesting characteristic that, apart of monitoring the fires when they take place, give us a lot of information on the so-called fuel map. So we can, with this satellite, look at the material composition of what is observing. We can identify areas that have a very high potential to develop fires. Looking at that from space, you can imagine how useful it is to prevent and confine or even avoid a situation of fire mounting up. This is an example of fires in California monitored by Prisma in 2020. It was mentioned already, but it is fantastic how well we work already together among different spacefaring nations on a common charter of management and support of disasters using the space assets. You can see in a list here in the chart some, I don't think it's exhaustive, some of the national agencies or international agencies that provide data, and these data are provided with no, thanks to this charter, with no delay. Say when an emergency arrives, data are immediately available without prevention, because time is absolutely essential in those situations. Okay, I think I can skip those other. Okay, this is interesting. Another aspect of observation from space during disasters is also that you don't just limit yourself at the moment when the disaster happens, but you can also go beyond, go further in time and check the evolution of, for example, the infrastructure that was developed, or it has to be developed after the disaster has unfortunately struck. Okay, I think this chart here is just showing what today basically we think as the future of disaster and security management is a list of reflection of what we see the evolution of the field, and I think can be taken as a perfect start for the next part of the panel, where I will have the colleagues here on the panel talking about their point of view on the use of space technologies for disaster management. Saying this, then I would like to give the floor to Vugar Bayramov, member of a Committee for Economic Policy, Industry and Enterprising of the Parliament of Azerbaijan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for giving floor to me. Once again, I would also like to thank Mr. Dominique for inviting us here. It's really a pleasure for us to be here and also to address such a prestigious audience. Because of the time limitation, I'm going to focus, let's say, 4 major points here. The first point I'm going to address is of course the history of the space industry in Azerbaijan, and then of course, since I am a member of the parliament, cooperation between parliament and also state space agency is very important, and then I will also focus this point, and then how space industry in Azerbaijan focus and positively impact on fighting with disaster and also enhancing security, because security is not only, I mean, the energy, not economic and social security, but of course, such as energy security and the security of the total, the general system, which is important in terms of the development of space industry in Azerbaijan. Of course, if I have time, and then I will also address to SDGs, which is the, Mr. Chairman mentioned here some points regarding the implementation of SDGs in context of development of space industry. Space industry in Azerbaijan was set up in 2009. The same year, state program on the development of space industry in Azerbaijan was signed and approved by President of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev. And this is actually the starting year for space industry for my country. And since 2009, we observed development of this industry in Azerbaijan, which positively impact of the economic development, security, and also fighting with disaster, which actually I will try to go more detail, particular security issue in my speech. And regarding to collaboration between Parliament of Azerbaijan and also, let's say, state in this industry agency, which is very important in terms of the improved legislative base for development of space industry in Azerbaijan. At the same time, the role of parliament is important in my country in terms of using the industry services, so space industry services, particularly for enhancing security in different sectors, including economic, social, and other kind of security. I actually mentioned economic security because, as you know, Azerbaijan is the oil producer and exporter country, and Azerbaijan is also playing this special role in enhancing energy security in EU by exporting Azerbaijani gas to European Union. And Azerbaijan is one of the new sources for EU and also for the region in terms of the enhancing energy security, which is becoming more important in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, since the energy crisis in the region is one of the major obstacles. And from this perspective, of course, the space industry is also playing a role in terms of the finding new fields and also increasing output of the energy sources, including natural gas, and exporting more natural gas to neighborhood, including EU, and also, of course, promote security in the region. But of course, since Azerbaijan is a oil and gas producer and exporter country, for us it's really important to enhance and promote economic diversification to increase role of the non-oil sector in order to reduce energy dependency. And then space industry is one of the major tools in Azerbaijan in context of the promoting non-oil sector in my country by promoting different sectors in non-oil sphere, including agriculture, environment, and some other sectors, which is very important in terms of the development of non-oil sector. And then for the economic development and also promoting economic performance in Azerbaijan, space industry is having actually right now one of the key roles, particularly for agriculture, because in the agriculture sector we do use data which is produced by space industry, which is very important for development the agriculture sector. This is also important for food safety and food security, and if you consider that high inflation rate in the region, including Azerbaijan, and of course food safety and food security is also becoming so priorities. So then data which is produced by space industry, which the Minister of Agriculture is using to develop the sector in Azerbaijan and also to produce more agricultural goods and to enhance to achieving the food security and also safety in my country. Environment is and also protection of environment by using data of the space industry is also important, and Mr. Chairman already mentioned how to monitor fires in different countries. It's also we can also use the same actually approach for my country, because we use the data which is produced by space industry to fight also fires in my country, which is I think is becoming more important for not only for my country or for the region, but for this is one of the global challenges for that time. And then space industry in Azerbaijan produce tangible data which actually we use for environment, which for fighting with fires and also to protect environment. And then from this perspective, of course, implementation of SDGs is and also supporting SDGs implementation goals by development of the space industry is also important. And then Azerbaijan is one of, in the region actually, Azerbaijan is one of the leader countries which is supporting implementation of SDGs by submitting different reports to UN, and then, which is making the country more active. And then industry, mainly data produced by industry is also crucial for SDGs implementation, promotion, and supporting in my country. And since actually my time is over, but I also would like to join Mr. Soltan Mammadov's speech and to invite and to welcome all our colleagues and friends to Baku next year. I'm sure, and Madam Dominique mentioned, the Baku is a really nice city, and I believe and I hope that we will be able to see you, all of you, in Baku next 2023, and then I am sure all of you will enjoy a nice city of Baku. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bayramov, and yes, we are all looking forward to the IAC in Baku, and thanks for presenting the commitment of your country to space activities. I would like to give now the floor to Robert Borofis. He's a senator in the Senate of Nigeria, and he will present the impact of Nigeria's space program on disaster management and national security. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for inviting me to participate in this conference. I'm particularly committed to the development of space science and technology in developing countries. I am the pioneer chief executive of the National Space Research and Development Agency in Nigeria, and I held that position for 12 years. I was also the leader of Nigerian delegation to United Nations Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space for 12 years. I became a member of Parliament in 2011, and I was given the mandate of heading the chair of Space, Science and Technology in the Senate of Nigeria. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, we have gone a long way in establishing a space program and space agency. And on 5th of May 1999, the federal government of Nigeria approved the establishment of the National Space Research and Development Agency. And in 2001, the National Space Policy and Program was established. Consequent upon this, the federal government went ahead to draw up a 25-year roadmap for space development in Nigeria. In realization of the objectives of the policy and program, Nigeria has launched 3 Earth observation satellites, codenamed Nigerian Sat-1, Nigerian Sat-2, Nigerian Sat-X. Nigerian Sat-X was, manufactured wholly by Nigerian scientists. These were launched and have contributed a lot to international constellations and also disaster management globally. I must say, Mr. President, that our focus on the space policy and program is on space applications in various areas, in agriculture, in disaster management, in desert encroachment, and those areas that we feel we can manage. We cannot afford to be involved in the luxury of spacefaring because of financial constraint. And nevertheless, we have made our effort in collaboration with other space agencies and countries in the world to make space application something that we all benefit from. Nigeria joined the Disaster Monitoring Constellation in 2003, and the constellation consists of Algeria, Nigeria, Turkey, Britain, and China. The DMC provides emergency Earth imaging of disaster relief under the International Charter for Space and Major Disasters, which the DMC formally joined in November 2005. The DMC partners also share ground facilities, as data can be downloaded from any spacecraft within the constellation at the most convenient mission control center and transmitted to satellite owner via the internet. It is important to state at this junction that Nigeria Sat-1 is one of the first satellites to provide data over New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and the Southeastern Asia tsunami of 2006 under the DMC constellation. Nigeria became a member, an authorized user of the International Charter for Space and Major Disasters after the DMC signed the agreement with Charter on 20 October 2000. The aim of the ICSMD is to provide a unified system of space data acquisition and delivery to those affected by natural and man-made disasters through authorized users. Each member of the agency committed its satellites and other resources to support the provisions of Charter, thus helping to mitigate the effects of disasters on human life and property. This chapter works together to acquire satellite data and provide data at no cost to civil protection agencies over any affected areas in the event of disaster outbreak. It is noteworthy to point out that Nigeria has successfully activated the Charter for data for 3 major flood disasters in Nigeria to date. The access to more real-time satellite data during period of disaster through the participation of Nigeria in the Charter has positively impacted on environmental security and security. Nigeria is also a member of the African Resource and Environmental Monitoring Satellite Constellation. In 2006, we joined the African, that is Algeria, Kenya, and South Africa to put in place the African Resource and Environmental Satellite Constellation. The ARMSC is a constellation of African satellites to be charged with providing geospatial data over the African continent on a 24-hour basis. Because of time constraint, I will just go into some other interesting areas. I also want to mention that in emergency response, we are a member of the UN SPIDER. You may wish to recall the UN Resolution 61/110 of 14 December 2006, where the United Nations General Assembly agreed to establish the United Nations Platform for Space-Based Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response. The UN SPIDER to ensure that all countries and international, both regional organizations, have access to and develop their capacity to use all types of space-based information to support the full disaster management and cycle. I would like to inform you that the UN SPIDER for West African and Central hosted a collaboration with United Nations Office of Space Affairs and training program for project managers a few days ago in Nigeria. And the training is targeted to enable the PM within the region to be able to activate the international chapter, space and major disaster when the need arises. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, we are also using space to address issues of security in the country. One of the effects of desertification in Nigeria is desert encroachment. The desert is moving downwards to the southern part of the country. The consequence of this are the livestock farmers, which we call the herdsmen, are losing access to their feed for their animals, so they are moving downward. As a result of which there are clashes between the herdsmen and farmers, leading to security. Also, we have armed men living Mali, Chad, Libya, coming to Nigeria, causing a lot of insecurity problem in the form of banditry. Also in the northeast, we have Islamic insurgency. This is a serious problem facing Nigeria in terms of insecurity. Also in the southern part, we have the militants destroying pipelines. Nigeria depends on 90% of foreign generated revenue from oil. And this is being attacked by militants by destroying the pipelines and also illegal bunkering. So these are security challenges. And the Space Agency of Nigeria is doing everything possible to work and assist relevant agencies in monitoring this insecurity problem. I personally sponsored, as a member of Parliament, the establishment of Defense Space Administration under the military that can work with the Nigerian Space Agency to fight insecurity and other challenges of security nature in Nigeria. Mr. President, I want to say that we are committed to developing our space program, and we are willing to collaborate with other space agencies in the world. As I said, as a developing country, we cannot afford the luxury of spacefaring, but we will appreciate opportunities to train our own experts and to exchange data where we feel will be very useful to us in the country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Barofis. And let me say that you had a statement at a certain moment saying that no matter the financial resources, nowadays every country cannot afford not to be engaged in space activities. I think this is a very strong message that should stay for sure, taking into account the service that space provides to nowadays life on the planet. So we are very honored now to have on the floor Sergio Freitas de Almeida, who is Vice Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation in Brazil. And he will talk about space for natural disaster risk management in Brazil. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, distinguished representatives of all governments and parliaments present here in Paris. It's an honor for me to be here at the 12th IAF International Meeting for Ministers and Members of Parliament. Before getting into specifics, I would like to highlight Brazil's aerospace national capabilities, in particular the infrastructure for satellite integration and tests located at the National Institute for Space Research, the INPE. The development and supply and design of satellite parts and pieces in the national industry, and space applications for deforestation and forest fires monitoring. And also the Alcântara launch infrastructure, one of the best launch sites in the world due to its geographic, geological, and weather conditions. Moreover, it's important to mention that Brazil is in the final phase of building public policies to organize the Brazilian space sector in this new space context. The use of space technologies as state technology, as satellite technology, is an indispensable part of everyday life. In addition to contributing to global socio-economic development and connecting people, it's being used by states and non-state actors to address a range of global issues like environment preservation, climate change monitoring, biodiversity protection, education empowerment, telemedicine services, and agricultural activities management. Due to Brazil's continental dimensions, space and its technologies and applications are crucial for national security, taking care of national borders, combating drug trafficking, illegal exploration of the national bio and geodiversities, and prevention and mitigation of natural disasters. The National Center for Monitoring and Early Warning of Natural Disasters, CEMADEM, created in 2011 by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations, has the mission of developing and expanding a national network to monitor risk areas, to predict natural disasters, and to provide civil defense local teams with early warnings of imminent threats. CEMADEM supports federal government policies in different perspectives and pathways for affected regions at various time scales, such as intense rainfall events that trigger floods, landslides, or seasonal events such as droughts. To fulfill its mission, CEMADEM has its own network of meteorological radars, automatic rain gauges, hydrological stations, and geotechnical sensors covering the entire Brazilian territory. CEMADEN also has a specific network of agrometeorological stations to monitor the Brazilian semi-arid region and to assess the impacts of droughts. And in addition, CEMADEN also uses satellite technologies to assist its mission. As an example, satellite technology is used to prevent and manage risks regarding floods. With the help of geographic information systems mapping, it's possible to record hazardous areas and monitor their status in real time. Another project that uses space technologies at CEMADEN is the monitoring of droughts and its impacts in Brazil. Apart from CEMADEN, also the National Institute for Space Research, INPE, provides space information able to mitigate, combat, and plan strategies to avoid some kinds of natural disasters as well. One area that INPE focuses is in the wildfires and their impacts on natural and human-associated systems. In this context, Brazilian and international satellites are used to monitor and provide alerts and projections of deforestation fronts, which are one of the key indications of fire events in tropical forests. INPE played an important role, for example, in the mitigation of the 2015 Marianas mining wastewater dam disaster. And spaceborne satellite data collected from current and past Earth observing systems were key tools to map the extension of the mud plume, monitor its temporal evolution, and disentangle the impacts caused by the tailings dam failure from the natural sources of suspended sediment in the coastal zone. In 2019, for example, there was a major oil spill at the Brazilian northeast coast, and Earth-observing satellite data were promptly used to seek for the extension and origin of the oil spill, including commercial and non-commercial synthetic aperture radar imagery, true color imagery from optical sensors, and auxiliary meteorological and ocean satellite data. The unprecedented national effort triggered the development of a unique oil spill monitoring system named CNES to be used in the Brazilian coast. Dear colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity to also address the topic covered in session 1, space for public services, sustainability, rural environments versus cities, especially the relevance of space and its technologies and applications for efficient soil management, preservation, and of the Amazon forest and other biomes and their resources, all associated with urban planning, especially for medium and large cities. INPE has been using strategic national and international space technology to support public infrastructure implantation, operation, and sustainability. The three main fields supported by INPE are, first, monitoring of the conformity of public buildings and roads with project specification and timeline, using high-resolution images from Brazilian satellites, CBERS 4 and CBERS 5. 2 minutes. Oh, 0 minutes already. Okay.
It's not so short, no?
Very short for me.
It's a mistake. Yeah, it should be a mistake. Okay, okay.
How many minutes?
Two. The last two.
Two and a half.
No, be short.
Okay. INPE, well, besides one of the great projects demonstrating the sustainability of the Brazilian agribusiness is the soy moratorium. In this project, the use of satellite images is a fundamental tool. The use of images from Landsat and Sentinel satellites are important for the detection of areas that are in accordance with parameters established by the agreement between civil society that sells soil. And finally, I would like to mention that the International Space University's 35th Space Studies program will be hosted in Brazil next year. It's a partnership between the National Institute for Space Research, the Technological Institute of Aeronautics, ITA, and the city of São José dos Campos, with the support of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations, and also the Brazilian Space Agency. I am very happy to invite you all to join and send representatives to Brazil to take part in the SASP 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And well, I think it was very interesting to hear about how space activities, space technology are used for a country so large, diverse, like Brazil. It's very useful. We move now to the next speaker, and I apologize in advance for my pronunciation of your name. Nompendu Thobil Nkwachwa, who is the chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Innovation of the Parliament of South Africa. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, all right. So how do the slides move? Do I just? That time needs to go back to 10, eh? I'm watching that time. You know, in Parliament, the time starts when you say honorable members, and that's when the time starts. So I'm going to say bonjour tout le monde. It's my first time being in Paris, and I'm really excited. And je t'apprends le français en Côte d'Ivoire l'année 2017. Donc, c'est mon première fois to utilize mon français in actual Paris or actual France. So I'm really excited to be here. But I also took an opportunity to acknowledge other members of parliament or other countries that are here. And I think my colleagues from Romania are going to have to try and teach me how to say Buno de Minieta, but I can try and say bom dia, say buongiorno, salam in Azerbaijan. In Hungary, you'll also have to help me a bit. I think it's Zia, Iceland as well, you'll have to help me a bit, but we have a couple of days to interact with one another and just teach each other the basics of just greeting one another in each other's languages. So really, colleagues, it's an honor to be here with all of you. I am a mere member of parliament who only has a Bachelor of Science in Geography, so that's as close as I get to science. But as the Portfolio Committee Chair for Higher Education, Science and Innovation, for me, what's always been so important is to understand why we allocate so much budget to space. I mean, many South African young people, many South Africans feel that, why do you want to spend so much money on a satellite? Why do you want to spend so much money on a telescope that's out there in the air that we can't see? But today we discuss a matter around how remote sensing, how space can contribute to disaster management, which I think is so important when you think of the livelihood of how remote sensing has a direct impact on mitigating the livelihood of many citizens. So now, going back to why space is important for disaster management. Disasters, we all know, colleagues, are recurring events. In South Africa, we are prone to flooding, fault fires, which I think you could refer to or relate to as bushfires, droughts as well. And I think in all of this, in terms of disaster management, we need to understand how we mitigate these disasters, how we prepare for these disasters, how we respond to these disasters, and most importantly, how we recover from these disasters. Earth observation, colleagues, plays a key role in each of these four stages of disaster management. Satellite imagery can be used in almost all stages of the disaster life cycle. Disaster management, colleagues, is a process of effectively preparing for for and responding to disasters. It involves strategically organizing resources to lessen the harm that disaster causes. It also involves a systemic approach to managing the responsibilities of disaster prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. I believe, colleagues, this is of paramount importance for the human livelihood, particularly my colleague from Nigeria, in a developing country with harsh socio-economic realities. Colleagues, in a country where citizens are already going through the challenges of inequality, where already we have challenges of a lack of food security, floods have a massive impact on our food security. So if we're able to use space to remote sense, to prepare better for floods, I think the first step is most importantly to mitigate the floods, right? And we all understand the fact that climate change has an even greater impact on all of these disasters that we face as the world. But if you were to just consider that in countries like ours, like Nigeria, like South Africa, many countries in South America and Asia, where our economies are not where they ought to be, investment in space for remote sensing to ensure that we're able to better manage disasters, I think is very important. Colleagues, in South Africa, we would like to deem ourselves, and no offense to the rest of the continent, as a satellite data hub. We have world-renowned geographic advantage. I don't think that's a secret. We all know that it's very great to observe from South Africa, and we are able to access data through our ground receiving stations. As South Africa, we pride ourselves in our active participation in the global space market. South Africa provides access to satellite data to the global market. We allow participants of the global space market to set up their satellite ground stations in our country, and then after this, we download the data from several Earth observation satellites utilizing hosted ground infrastructure. This, of course, includes many ground infrastructure that colleagues may know of, such as Landsat 8, Cybers 4B, Spot 67, MODIS, and. And after that, colleagues, the satellite data is then ingested, archived, and cataloged by SANSA. Colleagues, oh, I've not been moving the slides. Why did no one tell me I'm not moving the slides? I'm moving the slides on my device here, but not on your screens. I'm so sorry. So in that slide, I took you through the importance of space management. On that slide, I told you how South Africa is a satellite data hub in Africa. On this slide, I'm then showing you how South Africa is the only country that has satellite engineering capabilities in Africa, has the biggest and most advanced ground segment in Africa, the largest satellite image catalog in Africa, and the only space weather center in Africa. This is then our ground station in Hartbeespoort that is operated by the South African National Space Agency. Here, colleagues, we see a number of other Earth observation satellites other Earth observation satellites, and there they are listed. I want to highlight Sumbadira. Sumbadira was the last satellite that we built as South Africa. Sumbadira means pathfinder in a local South African language called Chivenda. We also pride ourselves in the fact that Sumbadira has been able to collect over 2,000 usable Earth observation images in the last 2 years. Colleagues, this slide is very busy. I'm so sorry it has so many images on it, but ultimately what this slide communicates is the fact that through space and remote sensing, we are able to produce these high-resolution images for spatial planning. And I think for me, colleagues, what becomes really important about this slide, so all these little, boxes that you're seeing are government departments. And ultimately, when we think of disaster, we need to think of how we need to collectively, in a collective and coordinated approach, not in these silos where in the case of a disaster, you have the Department of Science and Innovation doing its own research somewhere, and then hoping that all these other departments around human settlement, around infrastructure, around basic education, who build schools, higher education, who build universities, will see this data. No, colleagues, once we've done the research and captured the data as scientists, we need to make sure they get to the relevant authorities who will make sure that in the case of a disaster, they play their role in this ecosystem of government in responding to this disaster. So we need to work harder, colleagues, in ensuring that the work that we're doing, the remote sensing that we're doing, the images that we're getting, get to the authorities that will make sure that we're able to respond better to these disasters. So colleagues, this is a table of some form. I see the 2 minutes left. This is a table of some sort that indicates to you how we're able to, the different disasters that we have, drought, fire, flood, how we mitigate, how we prepare, how we respond, and how we recover. This is some of the drought assessment that we've been able to do on vegetation, and it, the assessments also tell us how, when the crop changes to a particular color, it means that we are going into a drought or we're going into extreme flooding. These are some of the images we're able to get through in situ flood detection that we use for mapping floods and mudslides as they happen. This aids our response as a country. Colleagues, we recently went through a hectic flooding in 3 of our provinces, KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, and the Eastern Cape, and this is some of the images that we got from it. The biggest question that came out from that was that if we were able to detect this through remote sensing, why were we not able to respond as effectively as we could have? So this is, for me, a big question we need to ask ourselves as members of parliament and as ministers who are responsible for their executive role. Colleagues, these are also just various images. So on the left-hand side, you'll see how the area looked before the flood. On the right-hand side, you'll see how the area looked after the floods. So this is just a couple of images that we got from the KwaZulu-Natal floods that we saw in Durban. I'm just going to browse through them because I probably have like 30 seconds left, right? So this is all the images that we're able to get from that. We also have a product called the Height Above Nearest Drainage product, which can be used to understand, predict, and calculate water movement, predict water storage, identify drainage networks, calculate water table potential, and so forth. We also have a tool called the early warning tool that's able to indicate which areas are most prone to be flooded. So these is also the images that we get from those particular tools. Colleagues, we also work hard on developing, my time is out, on developing human capital, either through developing our local leadership, our municipalities, but also ensuring that professionals in geographic information systems, professionals are developed in geographic information systems, remote sensing, IT, disaster management, town planning, agriculture, infrastructure, and so forth. Thank you so much, Re Leboga. Baie dankie. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, in particular for the enthusiasm you have transferred to us on a subject like this one. We're getting to the end of our panel, but actually I will use some of your comments to try to summarize what we have discussed, and in particular, there was something that was very important. You said how to bridge now the gap between, the information that the data from space are given and how we can intervene. For sure, one contribution to that it comes from the concept of that data fusion. It's very important and would be really essential to make the best use in the future of data coming from different sources, because those different sources, in particular sensors on ground and communication systems on ground, etc., are the ones that maybe are more, how can I say, are more prone to get an easy access by people who need to intervene. In this respect, I have a memory from my youth when I remember in 1980 in the south of Italy there was a terrible earthquake. At the time I was at my last year of my high school. I had relatives in the area that was hit by the earthquake. It took 3 days at the time for the rescue teams to arrive to find a path through destroyed roads or destroyed bridge, etc., to reach the areas which were really hit in the worst way. There was an earthquake not long ago. After a few minutes, thanks to satellite data, there was a clear idea of not only of the intensity of the earthquake, but there was a full picture of what we like to call space situation awareness. So we knew where the parts which were mostly damaged. In particular, we knew which were the roads not accessible anymore, etc. So, I mean, the intervention of civil protection and all the other entities that could intervene was extremely timely. Of course, then you need to engage in the reconstruction and all the rest, but these are the moments when you save lives and you set the scene for what you need to do afterwards. The world has changed completely, and thanks to space data also, I mean, not just the Earth observation side of it, but imagine the communication that can be established immediately thanks to satellite data. So it's really an incredible contribution, the one that we can provide working in the space field to make better response to disaster management and security. So is, in my opinion, an important really argument and food for thought for decision makers for the future, in order to make sure that thanks to international cooperation, thanks to investment in all the countries, according to what we can afford, we will make life easier, in particular in situations where life is really put in danger. In this respect, I would, if there are any comments from the audience that you would like to add, or questions, I think we have a couple of minutes to dedicate still to that. Please. You can remove the, yeah, perfect, thank you. Mic is coming, sorry.
Thank you very much. And very small comment and question. And first of all, I am grateful to all speakers for very valuable information for decision makers. At the same time, that will give us the power to justify more funding, more engagement for the space development strategies in our countries. And I was very happy to hear the importance of the space technology, space information for the national security. And at the same time, as you know, the question may be more technical, but there are many countries still suffering from the contamination of the territories with the mines. And our country is the most suffered, still fighting with the demining of some territories recently liberated from occupation. But my question is, can space technology be used for the mapping of the territories with the mines? Because many countries still suffering with that. Many people die. I am not a technical person. I am in the parliament. Just my question, I know that there are professionals. So we have MRI, which just makes a scan of the body. We have the, I mean, as we talk about the airspace, which give information about the potential forecasted earthquakes. But if there are territories with the mines, can't they scan and give the map of the exact mining landmines in the territories, which would be very useful? It's for my curiosity, and I highly appreciate for very valuable information for the decision makings and for coordination between the decision making bodies and the mostly governmental institutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was Solman Mammadov.
Thanks for, I think it's a very, very interesting question. And well, first of all, I apologize. Not being an expert specific in, I might say something which is not correct. And of course, I invite, if there is someone, please to intervene. What I can tell you is that as of today, the direct identification of areas where there could have been, there could be mines, I don't think can be done now directly, but as I mentioned before, the key is this concept, this idea of the data fusion, in the sense that when you can merge information that you get from space, that will tell you, for example, that there have been excavation, there have been modification in the landscape. In the previous days, there were movement of troops on certain areas instead of another one. And you combine those data with all sorts of information that are available nowadays. I was fascinated when already a few years ago I read that in a specific area of Earth, they could determine possible positioning of military troops, not just from space data, but taking into account information like the price of bread in local in certain villages. A few apparently insignificant images put on the social in certain areas that were just a couple of bits of information merged with others were giving a lot of extra added value. I mean, combining those things thanks to technology like artificial intelligence, you can get a lot of pretty reliable information on what you are looking for, which could be what you just mentioned or other information. Of course, you don't have maybe the 100% the certainty, but you can drive specific intervention in the area where, of course, you will always need human professional intervention to solve the issue. That's the situation today, as far as I know. I don't know if particularly my colleagues from the other agencies have some more ideas, or anyone else. Okay. Other questions by chance? Doesn't seem the case, so thank you, Dominique. And thanks, everyone. Yes, sure. Thanks to all the speakers for this very, very interesting, in my opinion, session.
And thank you, George.
Thank you.
Let's start to our last panel. As I say, how to engage public policy decision makers and media in space. And I give the floor to Philippe Baptiste, Président du Centre National d'Études Spatiales.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for organizing this very exciting session. So this is the last one of the morning, but of course it's the most interesting because this is the last one. So thank you very much. I just perhaps a few words to start. How to engage public policymakers, media in space. The first question I would really like to raise is, why is it a very important question? For us, as agencies, I am an agency, there is an obvious answer, which is not a good answer, but still I will give it. I mean, basically, you are designing and you are giving us our budget. So of course, we need to have this good interaction with you, and we need your support. I must say that some agencies are better than others to do that. I just like to recall that when you compute the total budget of space in the US, I think that we are close to something which is around 50 billion a year. I'm not sure we have a representative from the US to confirm that. It's really inclusive. Huh? I mean, all topics in space. I think that in Europe, if we make the comparison, well, I don't know if I dare to give the figure, but I think we are closer to something which is around 12 or 14 billion a year. So this means that NASA is doing a much better job than us. And as we have an ESA representative, I think that ESA and CNES and all other national agencies have to do better. No, but this is of course a bad answer. Budget is of course an important reason, but not only. I mean, the other important reason I think is that we need to explain what we are doing. We have mentioned a lot of times the question of climate, which is absolutely key, but also the question of exploration, understanding Earth, understanding the universe, and these are questions that are really fundamental questions and for which space is key. The third reason I would like to mention is that we need to attract young people, and having a strong interaction with media and with the public is essential because we need to attract talents, and I would say that it's for the space sector, of course, but not only for the space sector, because space is really leading all science and engineering and technical activities for young people. What I mean is that talking about space, usually you attract people, and young people love it. And usually these guys that you attract to space, when you talk to them, then at some point, perhaps they will do something else, but they will be interested in science and technology, and that's really something important. And the last reason, which is perhaps I think the most important, especially as far as policymakers are concerned, is that it's not only to explain what we are doing, we also need your guidance. Because, I mean, space is also about policies. And we make decisions, we make choice, and these decisions, how much we will invest next year in, I don't know, in Earth observation versus exploration or so on, they are not only technical decisions, they are policy decisions. And we need your guidance on that. What do we want to do? I'm a European guy, so what do we want to do in Europe? Do we want to do more exploration? Less? Do we want to go to Mars, or do we want to do more Earth observation because climate is so important? And this is a very important debate, and it cannot only be a debate that we have between us. This needs to be some kind of political debate. So just to conclude this introduction, I just want to mention that, well, we try to take this topic very seriously in France, and at CNES, we try to invest a lot on this topic and on the interaction, well, with our policymakers, of course, but especially with the public. Just want to mention some few success that we had recently. We had a Twitch channel on the moon with something like 300,000 connection. So it was really an amazing figure. I mean, it was in French, so it was not international event, but 300,000 people was really a great success. And I just want to mention that everywhere we have programs with high schools, and we have something like 2,000 teachers who are trained to space related activities. This is quite a lot for a country like us, and roughly speaking, it means that we have about 1 million students who are exposed to space activities. And this is something we want, of course, to carry on a lot. So this was really to introduce perhaps the most important topic that I wanted to put in place, and perhaps a few questions to our panelists. Because you are policymakers, and I would really like to start this roundtable with a very simple question, which is perhaps a little bit disappointing, but why don't we have much more policymakers who are really interested to space? I mean, thank you to the audience who you are there, and it's great to have you here. But we need more. Yes, I wish we would be much more. Yes. So why can we not manage to attract more policymakers here? And similar question for the media. I mean, why is it difficult to attract the media to space? Well, I must say I'm a mathematician before being interested in space, and I can tell you that attracting the media to mathematics, I mean, it's a little bit harder even than space. But still, why don't we manage to be better at that? So to do that, we have an amazing panel, and the first speaker is Javier Joaquin Lopez Casarin, who is a member of Parliament of Mexico, and I give you the floor with, as you have understood, a sharp constraint on the timeline.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I think as everyone has so interesting questions, the way you put it out. And I would like to start sharing with you, talking about Mexico, the question would be, why should we be part of space? Why should we start investing? And I'm going to use the word invest because that's a word that doesn't usually flow on the policy makers, it's seen as cost. And when you change the perspective, when you understand that it has to be an investment and you're going to obtain something on the long term, medium term, it's another way of seeing things. I recently watched a documentary about when NASA was founded, and the same questions that were addressed at that moment are the same that we are facing in Mexico, and it is, why should we allocate some budget into space when we have other challenges, bigger challenges? For example, how should we address poverty, where we have 50 million people in poverty? Why should we invest when we need to build an infrastructure? So when you're talking about public policy, those are matters that you have to attend and then change the conversation, as you were saying, and make it more interesting. So for you to know, as you should, first of all, let me say hello from our General Director of the Mexican Space Agency, who couldn't be here, Dr. Salvador Landeros, and he sends his regards to all of you. And I'm here with one of my colleagues, Diputado Briano Borunda, who is right there. And we've been working together in a strategic way of addressing the matter. First of all, we just presented a proposal to include in our constitution the concept of outer space. We do believe if we obtain that, which is going to be a battle in Congress, we need 3 parts of it, that this is going to be a detonation of the sector. So part of the reason we're here is to understand this the frame of law that each agency, each country has built in the past years, so we can build up the route and understand that this is going to be translated with new jobs, new opportunities. It's a way for the youngs and the new generations to find another route, to change how Mexico has been participating into space. We have 5 aerospatial clusters. Out of those, it's about 300 companies, and out of those, 80% is about manufacture. So as you can see, it's just a little, very few where you have that area where you should promote innovation and where you should promote new solutions. So the question is, why should we be there? And should it be science? Should it be that we are going to start a new sector, that we are going to detonate foreign investments in our country, private investments, interchange of knowledge? Is it because we can then become part of the few that sit in a table and are able to discuss the future and being part of that? Yeah, those can be a lot of questions that can, and a lot of answers that can answer that question. And just for me to share one thing and how serious we're doing things, CELAC is the meeting of 33 countries, which is the Caribbean and Latin American countries. And through the pro tempore presidency that Mexico had for 2 years in a row, our Foreign Affairs Minister, Marcelo Ebrard, presented 2 concepts. First was to include innovation, and the other one was space. Due to that, we encouraged and built and did the first steps on working on the Latin American and Caribbean Space Agency, which at the moment has 20 countries. Right now, what we did is that we just put the seed, and we're hoping that things get rolling. Things for our country that we need to understand, of course, this is a communication. This is something that everybody is aware of. But our challenge is we have 498 fellow congresswomen and congressmen. By the way, we're 50% congresswomen, 50% congressmen. And that is to make this conversation something interesting for them, something that they need to translate to their constituents and tell them this is a good thing for our country, which is hard when you talk about present, and that these questions might be very obvious for you, but for our people, it's not that obvious. So that's the first challenge that we're facing. And I think I hope we have some good news for you in the next months. That's why I relate perfectly to session 1, session 2, and what will be the next steps about going into space, into public policy, and what are the immediate benefits that you could understand as you address them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these very clear descriptions of the challenge you face in Mexico to try to explain and to defend the space and all the aspects of space and all the difficulties that I think that we all have them. I mean, you have to, as a policy maker, you have to make choice between different programs, different options. And of course, you have to explain to people why you don't put more money on, I don't know, or you mentioned poverty, it could be hospitals or whatever, and why you put this money in space. So this is always a difficult and a complex challenge. So thank you very much for this, and I think that we are all thrilled to see the next steps that you have mentioned. Perhaps now let me give you the floor, Frida Gibbels. So you are a member of the Parliament in Belgium, and I give you the floor for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues. I would first like to thank the organizing committee with Madame Tilmans for inviting politicians, policymakers to this meeting. I think it's very useful, it's very inspiring, but I would like to give a warning. There might be some bias in this room. Probably this is an assembly of people who are already convinced that space is important. So the question remains, why is it that space does not get the attention it deserves? Is it because we are too unaware of the return on investment of the space economy? Is it because we don't realize enough how space science can be beneficial for society? Is it because space is not only literally, but also figuratively something far, far away? Is it because space science seems to be accessible only to top intellectuals like astrophysicists or rocket scientists? Is it because space travel is still too often seen as an unnecessary symbol of prestige? Missions to Mars and the Moon are spectacular, but they may seem to be of little direct use. Maybe these are all questions or reasons that play in our minds, but that doesn't mean we have to leave it there. I'd like to think that perception can be changed. Let's start with the first question. Are we making enough effort to make the return on investment tangible for the general public? When I look at my own country, Belgium, I can say that we contribute quite a lot to space. With an annual amount of approximately 250 million euros, we are the largest contributor of the small countries to the European Space Agency. But does the public realize that it is important to keep doing so? Do they know how many jobs are created in this way? The return on investment is supposed to be guaranteed, but isn't it also advisable to report and motivate this very transparently? After all, it is taxpayers' money, and every citizen has the right to know how his money is spent and why investments in space pay for themselves and yield a good return. Space research and industry contribute to our prosperity, and we must present that very clearly. I believe it is the job of elected politicians to ensure transparency when public money is spent. First of all, because our citizens deserve it, but also because it can create a larger support base for investments in space. Belgium is a special case in that respect, because different levels of policy are concerned, which often makes things complicated and which does not help transparency. While the federal government is responsible for all things concerned ESA, regional levels are responsible for space economy. Therefore, it is of great importance to make sure that there is a structural consultation between regions and their governments in order to work together as much as possible and to make sure that investments are smart, focusing on strengths and added value. And then I think that there is, at least in Belgium, still room for improvement. However, space is not only about job creation and direct effects on economy. The return on investment is also situated in the field of stimulating research and development and innovation, with benefits that can be situated in totally different domains that often prove to be very close to citizens. Indeed, I think it is often unknown that space research provides substantial value to society. Weather forecasts or navigation apps on a smartphone are fully established today and make our lives significantly easier. And we owe these apps to space research, which probably should be communicated more actively to the general public. These examples make what's in it for me very tangible. Being a healthcare provider myself, my attention is particularly drawn to the healthcare research that is performed during space missions. Because the process of aging goes quicker in space, it is an excellent lab to test the influence of, for example, nutrition and exercise on that aging process. Healthcare research and innovation that prove to be helpful in space can also be helpful on Earth. Examples are numerous, going from dietary guidelines, exercise tools, to algorithms detecting respiration patterns in infants. Very clear benefits with impact on individual lives on Earth. And with the abundant attention in media and commercials for anti-aging products and therapies, often with a questionable evidence base, maybe this aspect of space research is a Trojan horse to gain broad public and media attention. Space research boosts R&D and innovation on Earth by thinking out of the box. And it goes beyond that. There are more applications that can have a direct impact on our immediate environment or on public policy. Space may be far, far away, but the physical distance also has its advantages. By looking at Earth from a great distance, we literally see things in a different perspective. Observing Earth provides direct benefits for policymakers and citizens, but perhaps we are still too little aware of this, and perhaps we make too little use of it. For example, Earth observation generates tools that can help in a very efficient way with water management and the detection of flood-prone areas. In recent years, Europe has learned that it is not immune to this kind of natural disasters. And Earth observation can help us to better prepare and prevent and communicate. Another example, remote sensing is very relevant in order to detect effects of climate change. Our own Belgian PROBA-V satellite monitors vegetation, which allows to estimate the carbon dioxide buffering capacity. And data derived from remote sensing can also provide useful information for end users, such as farmers, in order to have better yield of crops. In so many, perhaps unexpected areas, Earth observation can guide and evaluate policy. By collecting data on a large scale, by benchmarking with other countries and regions, problems can be better demonstrated and substantiated, and also the effects of policy can be evaluated. So also in terms of democracy and the insights that we can offer to society, space technology has clear added value. Even for safety and security reasons, space has a lot to offer. We heard that just recently in the previous, by the previous speakers. The last couple of years have taught us that unexpected things can happen, and have stressed the importance of safety and risk management. It should be a core business for governments because citizens depend on them in times of crisis. And yes, space technology has added value also in this field. Another issue is that space research and space industry seem to be reserved for highly specialized engineers and physicists. The expression, "that is no rocket science," reflects that assumption. And of course, for certain high-tech processes and applications, specialized education and training is needed. But the space community needs all sorts of talents. Also, marketeers are needed, as well as lawyers and communication experts, for example. There's also plenty of room for improvement when it comes to reach minorities and female talents. Why not look for role models who are active in the space community to show that not only engineers and IT specialists are needed, but that a broad variety of candidates can apply for a job in the space industry. In Flanders, the region in Belgium where I come from, there are good examples of collaborations between space industry and public observatories. It is a way to involve citizens, maybe to inspire young students and to bring space industry closer to the public. That being said, I firmly believe that science communication has a major role to play. By explaining exactly what it is about space research and innovation, fewer people will be deterred and more people will be attracted to the space community. We have to actively lower the threshold in order to increase acceptance and enthusiasm. We have to incorporate more space knowledge in our school programs, inform citizens, and facilitate partnerships with the industry. We have to promote media campaigns on space technology and emphasize the need to keep on innovating in order to tackle the challenges of a changing world. Only few of my compatriots will know, for example, that our own Flemish and Belgian space industry is involved in the building of the James Webb Telescope. And that is a pity. We should be proud of what we do and what we are capable of, as an individual country, as mankind. But first, we have to actively inform and explain. And that is a role that politicians must take on together with scientists. Scientists must be able to explain the technical side in an understandable way. Politicians must be able to clearly motivate why investment in space is in the interests of all of us, even in times of crisis, especially in times of crisis, when innovation is all the more important to be able to cope with new challenges. We must not only bring people to space, but first and foremost, we must bring space to the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this impressive explanation, for this impressive list of strong and good rationale to believe and to invest in space. If I had some doubts, now they are over. So thank you very much. I like very much, I think, the example of the healthcare and aging process, because this is not something which is obvious. And it's very true that the experiments we are having on the International Space Station bring us some tremendous knowledge on that. And we all know this is something which is absolutely important for our society. So it's really a very good example of the outcomes of space, which is not obvious, but still very, very relevant to the domain. So thanks again. We now have Boguslav Vontor was supposed to come, but he could not make it, and I want to he's there, and Gustav is there, and Mr. Rizenko will give the talk and will participate to the round table. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And as always, on behalf of the whole delegation, let me express that it's really an honor and a pleasure to participate in the conference. And talking about involving decision makers in space, we really need to demonstrate the benefits of space. And while I'm speaking on the session on engaging the decision makers, policy makers, I would like also to give you examples which are relevant to the previous sessions on the session on crisis management. The crisis management is one of the areas where the added value of space, what the space can bring to the society, is very clear, is immediately visible. In the world where we can see, hear, unfortunately, too often we also experience consequences of natural disasters, the use of space applications to support crisis management is a very strong argument in favor of the space programs. And in Poland, space support for crisis management was always an important area. It has been so for almost 20 years. The first case where we had a major use of satellite data for crisis management happened in summer 2010. We had a massive flood caused by Vistula River. It affected large areas in central Poland. Historically, it was two ways the largest scale flooding in the history. And at that time, we had 22 institutions which were involved in crisis operations who were directly provided with satellite maps tailored to their needs and offering monitoring for flooded areas in 4 parts of Poland for weeks afterwards. So for the first time, so many entities and decision makers in these entities could see very practical benefits of Earth observation, of space. So it was not something remote, not something difficult, just the opposite. It was not rocket science. It was something that it can be useful for yourself. You can grab it, you can use it. And since that time, a number of smaller projects have been successfully carried out, but experience, at least so far, proves that, of course, technical maturity of Earth observation solution is high. We have information, but this still does not guarantee the successful use of this in crisis management and also in other areas. The soft aspects, the user-driven approach to information, not to data, to providing information is critical. And the products really need to be tailored to the needs of the users. They need to be provided in a simple way, in a very friendly way. And whenever, in case of crisis management, for example, integrated with already existing information systems, decision systems, being part of the GIS solutions. It may sound obvious and easy when you say this, but it is not easy to implement. And, but only when space applications are fully integrated into the practices of users, into the practices of decision makers, or the preparation of information for decision makers, then the really space becomes truly useful and valuable. Only when it's part of their regular activities, they can really appreciate it. And what is also very important to remember that space is only part of the information which can be available to end users. So we need to have the integrated approach and to put space in the context as part of the stream of information. The combined use of data delivered by Earth observation, by drones, by other monitoring systems, this is what brings the most possible added value. This provides relevant background information, this is for space, current information, space, drones, other sources, and then we can observe evolution of the current emergency, and we can also understand it in the context of the risk management, of the long-term activities, of the prevention, of all the decisions we need to take. And we are quite happy that we are able to streamline access to already existing sources of information. In Poland, we had a very recent example, well, maybe not very recent. 2 years ago, we had a major forest fire, largest in 25 years. And at that time, we were able to have information from the military reconnaissance center integrated into stream of data available for the firefighters. And as a result, they've been able to understand better the dynamic of the fire. And consequently, the strategy to combat this fire was appropriately adjusted. This is how we are really putting this into the logic of the decisions. And of course, this is an example where the users use space, but the fact that they use space goes up to the decision makers, to the commanders, to the politicians overseeing the civil security. And then the message is clear. Space was useful. Space was a part of the success we were able to stop this fire. So this is the approach which is very much needed. There is maybe one more point which is worth emphasizing, and this is the fact that until now, until recently, space was providing information on an ad hoc basis. Whether it's International Charter or Copernicus Emergency Services, this is the case when you provide information when they are needed. But we are having so many data with Copernicus constellations, with other sources, that we really start to think in terms of providing information which is waiting for the users, which is already there. particularly when we talk about information which can be obtained before, when we are talking about analyzing of the series of data, which space is perfect for, then it is really good to build understanding on the user side that information is waiting for you. The same way you look at the Google Maps, it is there. You are not requesting information, waiting 3 days and then getting it. No, it is there. And when in space information will be there and you know it and you get accustomed to it, your approach to it is different. The philosophy is different. Readiness to use it is much more appropriate. And I think this is a philosophy which is relevant for a variety of Earth observation, not only for crisis management. It is also a foundation of the concept of the National Satellite Information System that we are currently developing in Poland. The aim is to establish a set of monitoring services based on Earth observation, but also the other sources of data, which will aim at specific needs of public administration. They will be available on a dedicated portal in a very user-friendly manner, and they will be offering information tailored to the very specific needs, solving specific problems, exactly as the Frederick was talking about in the first session. Aim at the problem, provide useful input to the problem. Then the space gets a point. It really helped. If we are able to achieve this, we are really thinking that it's reasonable to expect that the millions invested in this will be returning in hundreds of millions for the Polish economy. That's the purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, the takeaway message is relatively simple. To involve decision makers, we need to identify areas of importance for them. We need to address them with space solution, with well-tailored space solution. And we need to deliver valuable information. If space can prove that it can make a difference, of course, and when it is promoted, then engagement of decision makers and their support will be forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that the idea to have some kind of ready-to-use data and to push data to people who need it instead of providing it when they require it is something which is really very important. It's quite a move from us, for us, under the control also of Giorgio, who is there, but space agencies, we always try to think in terms of technology, and we are thinking about the device that we are sending up there, and then perhaps there is the data which is going out, but I mean, from a historical point of view, I mean, most of the time we were spending a lot of effort on the satellite, on the launcher, but very little on the data. And this is a change that we have really to make, to be able not only to focus on data, but also to be able to push the data to people who require it. No, we cannot do this alone. Of course, we need several other people, because it's not only the data from space, because it's you mentioned it, and it's also the question of integration of data. So it's really very, very, very important topic. So thank you very much. So the last, let me now turn to the last speaker of this panel. So, sorry, okay. But perhaps shall we start with perhaps with Mehmet Fatih Kassir, who is the Vice Minister and Ministry of Industry and Technology of Turkey. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the insightful and inspiring speech of members of parliament. It's a great honor for me to address you here at International Astronautical Congress in Paris. For the next 5 days, the event will be an outstanding opportunity to bring together all space communities when the space sector is growing and evolving. With the democratization of space and new players entering the space race, global space sector has advanced rapidly. This progress comes with better awareness of the strategic value of the space by all segments of the society. And I am sure, like us in Turkey, meeting the interest and expectation of the public keeps the agendas of policymakers around the world busier. Distinguished participants, Turkey's concrete efforts to be a player in space race date back to 1985, the year Space Technologies Research Institute in our country was founded. Since that day, Turkey's activities in space concentrated around satellite technologies. Our space-based resources and capabilities now allow us to develop, test, and manufacture satellites. However, our bold goals and ideals go far beyond our achievements so far to maintain presence in the space and its peaceful use for the benefit of whole humanity. Foundation of Turkish Space Agency, an affiliated body of the Ministry of Industry and Technology, was a significant step we have taken to this end. Turkish Space Agency is now 3 years old, but its dynamism and energy encourage every Turkish citizen to keep pace with spacefaring nations. We know that strong and clear vision is essential for the success of Turkish Space Agency and the growing ecosystem in our country. Our vision for future space activities is stated in the National Space Program, outline of Turkey's 10-year strategies, objectives, and projects. The goals and the vision our National Space Program has put forward is embraced by all public authorities in Turkey at the very highest level. Announcement of National Space Program by the President is the ultimate proof. The program has also met with great interest, not only from Turkish public and media, but also from international media. This strong interest excites every one of us. We have 10 goals to achieve by 2030. Most complex and demanding of those targets is the moon mission. We aim to reach the moon with a domestic and original hybrid rocket. In the first phase of the mission, we will make a hard landing. This will make Turkey one of the few nations ever landed on the moon. Following the hard landing, by 2028, we will be reaching moon by our national launch rocket and make a soft landing. We will conduct a scientific research on the moon surface. Another one of our exciting goals is to send an astronaut, a Turkish citizen, to ISS with a scientific experiment mission in 2023, the 100th anniversary of the Republic of Turkey. This is a historical mission for Turkish society. That's why we called all eligible Turkish citizens to represent Turkey in space. More than 36,000 people applied to become the first Turkish astronaut. Like both moon mission and Turkish astronaut science mission, almost every other strategic goal of the National Space Program includes international cooperation and collaboration. Therefore, we are more than ready to work with you. We want to achieve these goals together. In addition to strong international cooperation, bold targets of the program can only be achieved when we provide young people right opportunities and right competencies. One of our most visible and important steps is Technofest, Aerospace and Technology Festival we have been organizing for the last 5 years. This year, more than 150,000 teams from 107 countries applied for technology competitions in 40 different categories, including rockets, drones, satellites, and jet engines. This year's festival took place 2 weeks ago, and more than 900,000 people visited this festival. Sky observation events are other important popular astronomy organizations in our country. This year, we have organized 4 big events with the participation of thousands of people from all ages and backgrounds, bringing space and society together. Strong interest from public, both Turkish and international media, has again proven us that these events are effective tools to drive interest in space. What I'm trying to emphasize here is that in Turkey, by organizing biggest events in the country in this area, in this topic, in aerospace, we chose to focus on our youth. We have a very young population. The median age of Turkish population is 32. And we are trying to make our young people, our youth, to think that they are not objects of these areas. Instead, they are subjects of these themes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at this stage as candidate to host the IAC 2025 in Istanbul, Turkey, a city well known for its unique surroundings and breathtaking views. Capital of different civilizations in the history, a major transportation hub with regular direct flights to more than 120 countries, leading tourism destination with wealth of first-class accommodation facilities, a prime destination for international meetings. With 7 purpose-built convention centers and 3 exhibition centers, Istanbul hosted many large international gatherings. Now, Istanbul is more than ready for IAC 2025. By hosting the IAC in 2025 in Istanbul, Turkey, we want to grow and strengthen our relationships with partners across the world. We want to work together with the international space community to solve humanity's greatest challenge. We want to forge new partnerships for the benefit of our citizens and humanity. We wish the event to be a forum for developing and least developed countries to showcase their achievements as well as their concrete efforts to contribute whole humanity. We want to drive strong interest from the people of developing and least developed countries into space. IAC 2025 will be a historical opportunity for everyone to work towards reducing the space gap between spacefaring nations and emerging players in space race. The event will also allow us to participate in and contribute to the activities of IAF with great ambition and responsibility. Hope to achieve all of them together with you. Hope to welcome you in Istanbul in 2025. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very ambitious roadmap that you have shared with us, and I think that we all also heard a clear message on IAC 25 with a strong candidature that we have heard of already. So thanks a lot. So sorry that we have our last speakers. I apologize for my mistake before. So we have another member of the Parliament of Mexico who will take the floor now, Mr. Burunda. So you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Hola. Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to address you in these issues of the Astronautical Congress International. As an aerospace engineer and member of the Mexican Parliament, I am convinced that impulse and strengthening of the research science, technological development, and innovation contribute to the general welfare of the humanity. Precisely, the spatial domain is one of the large sectors of innovation and scientific development 21st century. Nations are working for the create or consolidate its activity related to other space to improve living conditions of their towns. In the mid-1990s, the Mexican state incorporated in the constitutional framework satellite communication and activity of the aerospace as priority for national development, which allowed the people Mexican could enjoy the technology benefits derived from the spatial activity. After almost 30 years, the framework Mexican Constitution limits the space sector in only communication activity satellites. So in my role as legislator, I have taken of the test of integrate all the actors in the sector Mexican space with the aim of the set to activity space relate priority or space from the national development from the constitutional. If achieved, it will set a partner for the Mexican state has a special legal system capable of the potentially the capacity transversally with impact in various areas of the national problems. The entrusted task has really been a challenge, the option to the making national and international forums, panels, books, and presentation, and among other activities. They have made it possible to introduce the decision makers and the society. The fundamental thing, that is the use exploitation of the space order, the will to promote dialogue between the political parties has been moving forward in the legislative process. With the exchange of the ideas permits interested in having an integration and coordination of the space activities in the nation of the regions in order to have, with a degree, autonomy, technological independence. Decision makers, we must promote cooperation, international transfer technology. The exchange of the information and scientific research access to data obtained from the space is essential for developing countries can make better decisions, matters such as food safety, natural research, and management disasters. Support decision-making space technology development implies the correct application and incidence of capabilities, regional, national, and local. On the other hand, the transfer technology affects the capability to solve problems, regional, national, and local. We have a great challenge ahead of the equal access to space for everyone, including countries with special ability. It is necessary to establish alliance and take action to fill the existing gap, leaving no one but with a sustainable space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this intervention. I think that we have perhaps time for one or two short questions. And so if anybody in the audience has remarks or questions concerning the round table. I think it's up. Yes. Oui.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all the panelists. I really enjoyed this segment. Very passionate about overall how science and innovation, or science, technology and innovation, can have a direct impact on the livelihood of citizens. And you all touched on that. But key question, we speak about trying to get citizens and the public and media to understand the importance of space, but I think we are really struggling with our own governments and all the departments in our government to understand it. In South Africa, we have the decadal plan that really wants to try and better integrate science and innovation into all departments, also so that we can better coordinate our budget, because we all know that we need an increased budget for the work that we want to do. And so my question is, how can colleagues share, how their governments have tried to work around coordinating budget for space and maybe overall for science, technology, and innovation? And the second question then links to where does this program sit? Does it sit in the Department of Science and Innovation? Does it sit in the presidency? Because those are questions we are having to say, if we are struggling to lobby departments to earmark or earmark funding for science, technology, and innovation, maybe we should put it in the presidency so that, but colleagues can share how their countries are doing it so that we can see what could work best for South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's very, very important question. I mean, which means basically what is the organization, what is the governmental organization which is able to efficiently tackle the space questions, which are not only scientific questions, not only defense questions, not only industrial questions, but and not only related to citizens, but that's really, well, we can see that it really touches many different aspects of governmental questions. So I don't know, among the panelists, perhaps.
Thank you. Well, I can share what I've been doing, what we've been doing as an experience, because I think that's the main question, and how to engage the public policy, and not only the decision makers, but for us, our entire country. Previously, they've said many words that I do connect them. First of all, it has to be a vision. It has to come out of the head of the state. If not, you're going to find it quite hard. There's going to be a huge resistance, which right now we are just moving along. Another thing that we're trying to build, and that's going to be us talking to you for the next days, is how to build that strong frame of law, taking under consideration the international one, including, as Vice Minister said, cooperation, integration, sharing knowledge, because that will bring immediately, if you have a strong frame of law, that's trust, that will be investment, that would be new jobs, that would be new education, and that will build the new sector. And that's how we're looking at it. It's going to take time, but that's how we're looking. And then two main questions: how to attract the private sector into it, and the other one for us would be how to attract the budget of the public sector. And that would be showing them the new opportunities that will be open, the new careers, and that we will start strengthening this ecosystem which is needed in the evolution of new economy sectors or chains of value into our country. That's what we would be facing. And then the last but not least thing is that we became communicators. We switched our conversation and started sharing out wherever we can in our country to talk about the benefits about getting involved into space. And not only to the young ones, because we did a study in Mexico, which I think it's worldwide, or it might be, but the rate of success when you start a business, it's not when you're young, it's when you're above 50. And that's due to experience, and that's due to managing financial risks. So of course we need to get the young ones involved for that adventure and to get them pumped into it. But I think we also need to put attention into those 50 and above that due to our labor that are very similar around the world, they're gonna, at 60, 65, they're going to retire. So you have a good chance of getting them involved into a new adventure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that perhaps one last short.
Okay. Especially if for the use of budget, I would like to share how we do that in Turkey. We have two main ways. First, for big research programs like Moon Mission or like this Turkish astronaut program, the budget is dedicated to the use of a National Space Agency linked to our ministry, and the Turkish Space Agency is managing that budget on its own. But for, let's say, smaller research programs, smaller R&D studies on applications of space technologies in different kind of areas like agriculture, transportation, or environment, the budget is put on a special program. The name of that program is Governmental R&D Support Program, and the budget is given to the Turkey Scientific and Research Council, and its Turkish name is TÜBİTAK, and this council has a different kind of calls to institutes in the country, and this council is co-financing those studies in different kind of areas, so that other public administrations, ministries, or municipalities are motivated to join that kind of programs.
Yes, I come back how to engage. For me, the first problem is communication, the communication. Well, when you have the communication from the state and the communication in Europe, in the United States, a long time they communicate about space. You have images, you have videos, you have events, you have many things. In Europe, it's not the case. In Europe, the communication was made, I'm sorry, by engineers, by technicians. And this is the problem. I'm sorry for the engineers, but there is a job for everyone. So I'm not sure the engineers are the best people to communicate. Yes, to communicate with engineers or technicians, but not with politicians and not with the press. And that's the reason why I asked to put this third panel in our discussions, because I make politics during 27 years, and when I make politics, and I said to the people that I'm very interested by space, and I'm working by space. I said, oh, Dominique, what are you doing? The money invested on space will be better invested on Earth. And so they are really upset because I'm working on space. And so it's really a problem of communication first. We must make space accessible. And that's the reason why we made this meeting, because this meeting is made for us. It's not technique, it's not seagulls and many things and that we don't understand. And so, and I made the conclusion by the same way, but I feel with all our exchanges and all your presentation that we need a place for us. We need a place when we discuss, when we can exchange, when we can inspire each other, and I think this is the most important we have to do. And I'm not agree that all of us here are close to space or interested by space. When we were in Dubai, we have two parliamentarians who are not aware about space, but they are coming and we ask, of course, to make a presentation. And then they make a presentation. After the presentation, they said, well, it's so interesting. I don't know, it was so interesting. And no, they are interested in space. So the way of we are functioning here in our meeting, it's to push you to make a presentation, and though some of us are not specialists, are not certainly specialized, but they are interested, some are not interested, but they push them to be interested in space. So we have to change our communication. That's very important. And when we see the weather forecast, why we have it on the TV, this is thanks to the satellites. Huh? Okay, I saw an emission on the TV in Belgium, and it was very interesting. It's people who was blind and you see nothing, and so they show how we can, with this mobile, walking in the street. And but never they say that's thanks to satellites. So we have to change the way how we communicate about space, and then slowly we convince more and more people. And I would like to add, it's not only, of course, it's a question of budget, but it's also in many governments, space is not a priority. And there are other priorities. And the minister who has space in his portfolio is often alone to have a really big budget for space, because his colleagues are not convinced by space. So it's only parliamentarians, and also ministers have some difficulties to convince their colleagues about the necessity of space, and especially when they discuss the budget. Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to say that slowly this meeting become important, and we have to convince our colleagues. We have to make the tam-tam functioning. We need to convince our colleagues that this meeting is really an important meeting for us. It's a place to be. And convince that space can benefit for all of us, for all the society, for all civil society. And especially for the countries who are not connected to space, not yet connected to space. It's important that those countries are coming here just listening by our presentation, by your presentation, because just to open the eyes, open the ears, and to see that how space can help their countries. I think it's very important to explain how the nice job we can make here, and I count on you to explain and to convince them to come, not next year. Well, Sophie, you have to make no closing remarks? We close here? Okay, but I have, no, sorry.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
So I have a message to tell, I have something to tell you. For Monday, so there is a visit, thanks to Sophie, a visit of the Senate, and we ask you to come at 2:30 here, downstairs, in front of the doors. Here's the appointment, 2:30 Monday to visit the Senate. Okay? So the best is coming. We are going to the lunch. And thank you very much for your presence and your friendly. Thank you.